Hey, hey, hey. Hello out there. You're watching ILBC TV. That's the International Live Beat Channel. My name is Alicia, and we are ready for another episode of fun tonight with our friends. So before we start, I just have a lot of really, really cool events. We've been working on this channel for a while now, and we want to start having real life events, more workshops. Some of you may have seen Print My Live last night. If you missed that, you can still give it a rewatch on Twitch. I took my friend Monar and helped her level up her live set with some tips on how to break things up in Ableton, how to make things sound a little bit better, and how to deal with venues, setups, and all kinds of other stuff. But I also have a few events to announce that we're doing besides that going on starting tonight, actually right now, and continuing through the next couple of weeks. So we got Nathaniel as usual in the house. What's up, Natty?
Hello, everybody.
So
looking forward to hearing all your songs.
I am looking forward to hearing everyone's songs too. But yeah, here, just to let you look, there's a couple of events that we have. Obviously, the first two have gone by, but on Saturday, I'm going to be test driving this new sort of concept. So that's why there's no time on it. But if you subscribe to the channel, you will be able to catch this. And it's called Brain to MIDI, which is basically a summary of what my amazing friend Calvin does. He's actually taken brainwave data from EEGs and converted it to everything from MIDI data and OSC to visual input to effects, like all kinds of crazy stuff. So you're not going to want to miss that. We don't know when we'll do it. It'll probably be sometime that's sort of good for everybody, but we're going to mess around with some cool tech and setup. And then he's going to walk us through his set. He's going to play a set, and we're going to see exactly how this stuff works. And then on the left, you can see a flyer for our next upcoming real life full-on concert. So if you're in Valencia, Spain, you can come to it in real life. If not, you can tune in on the stream. But we are going to have like live mixed reality performances from 3 live electronic artists with an opening DJ. So you're not going to want to miss that either. That's going to be at 5 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time or noon EST. And that's going to be Saturday, April 16th. So all right, we are ready to get going. I'm super, super excited, as I said. And so what do we have? Oh, wait. I almost blew it. I forgot the most cool thing that's coming up. Hold on, we got to go back. All right. So somebody who has not been on this channel a lot, but really should be because he's a huge part of it, is Matt Black from Cold Cut. And he is going to be doing a sample challenge. So I know a lot of you come in here from production backgrounds because this is a community we already have, but this is something more for you. If you've ever wanted to make sample packs, if you've ever wanted to make loops and things like that, but you don't really know how to get started or you want some tips, Matt has this really cool app called Jam Pro. This is how I actually first started working with him. It's basically just a tablet app. It's only for iPad right now, but it's about to start being released for Android, which is really exciting because finally everyone else in the world can use it. But it's basically just a really cool on the fly resampling jam production tip. I'm going to play a little bit of this so you can sort of see. I don't know. There we go. So basically Matt is going to come and do a little mini workshop with me, and we're going to talk about how we make samples for packs, like tips on producing them well, tips on organizing them, what goes into thinking about a sample pack, and all kinds of stuff. And then the challenge will be presented to make samples at a certain key and tempo. After a couple weeks, you're going to be able to submit those, and Matt is going to turn them into a live jam set on stream. So he's going to be taking your loops and samples. And basically, if you get your samples put in here, this gives you a pathway to have some sounds and maybe make some sound packs for Ninja Tune's Jam Pro app, which is a pretty exciting opportunity. So for any of you that are sort of wanting to get into it, stay tuned. Our first event with the workshop is going to be April 24th, and the follow-up event should be on May 8th. That'll be all on our ILBC streaming calendar. So that's the really exciting thing I didn't want to miss. All right, now let's go into the queue and figure out our first candidate. It looks like the person first in line is Quansil, and the track is called Welcome Back Home. They say it was my first shot at Electro House, and I think that it turned out pretty good. Okay, well, let's check it out. This is Welcome Back Home by Quansil. Wow, this is definitely a track of contrast. What did you say, Natty? I feel like the intro and the breakdowns and the drop are almost like two different tracks.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I mean, there is a way, I think, to make this work, but I think it means you have to go really, really subtle with the differences between the two halves. I mean, the first sort of portion is very chill-steppy in vibe, and that's neat, but then you sort of overdo it with your kicks before the build-up really kicks in, drop hits. They're too heavy, so it sort of takes away from the chill bit, and then that's not really so good in that regard. And also there's moments where the ARP comes in and you still got this really, really loud click, but I kind of just want to have a moment where I just absorb the fact this ARP has come in and get the ARP, because it's a really nice ARP. You've actually chosen some very nice chromatic notes in there to sort of give it this light tension, and that's neat, so you need to let people enjoy that. I think that's another thing. The other aspect would be, if you want to really glue these two ideas together, would be to have, yeah, you can have your switch up and that's fine, but then maybe for the second time around, start bleeding in more elements between the two halves. So, figure out a way to get that ARP to fit with everything else, with all the electro house stuff. The electro house bit's probably my favorite bit of the whole track. But you play it the same way twice, so you actually have a chance here to not do that.
It's so funny because I was just going to say that the intros and the breakdowns were my favorite part. So Natty, if we have joint custody, you can take one and I'll take the other. But I really do love like the chords. It's weird because some of them are very unorthodox, like they're not traditionally what you would expect, but I love it because they still work. And I think that it's really masterful when you can have like these kind of simple signy type of sounds, but just really sort of leveled up chord progressions, because that really caught my interest. And I think that for me, the thing about making it blend together is that the entire timbral sort of spectrum seems to change. Like in the intros and the breakdowns, it's very like round and soft and kind of fluffy. And then as soon as that drop happens, you have that bass, which is nice, but it's also very kind of like mid-heavy, and the whole balance changes. And I think that you have to glue them together a bit, whether it's maybe EQing things a little bit differently to blend, or yeah, I mean, as Shinity has said in the chat, maybe have a part of the ARP in the drop to make it more cohesive. So I think for me, yeah, it doesn't glue together in the way that I want. And this is why we have different opinions, because Natty likes part of it and I like the other part. But I do think you can make them both work if you just put the context directly.
Yeah, sometimes that can be as simple as just spacing it out a little bit more, giving yourself room to actually signpost more effectively.
Yeah. So everybody's like, oh my God, where am I in the chat? Sorry, this is a tough system. I kind of have to run all the aspects of the stream and talk and listen to your track and give you feedback at the same time. So I just want to say, the queue is not, it's getting close to full, but it's not too bad. And we've only got 2 of us tonight, so it doesn't take as long as sometimes it takes when we got 3 or 4. So I will try and find a way maybe to get the results to go on the stream. There's got to be some kind of widget I can get that does it. So I will figure that out eventually. But in the meantime, we're going to move on to Trepic, aka Jazzman on Discord. Just wanted to share the track. Nothing particular feedback wanted, but let's check it out. It's called Crazy House. Okay, so I got a lot to say on that one, but Natty, I know that you always have monologues, so I don't know if you want to go first on that one.
I kind of want to hear what you want to say first, and then I'll feed off that.
All right. So I think good ideas, lots of cool like melodies, lots of nice vibe, lots of atmosphere. But I think there is a lot of stuff that you should be fixing with the mix before you release it. Okay. I think it's going to be much better if you go back. And what I would recommend is do a bunch of mixing and then maybe even get somebody else to master it, because I know how it is. Like I get other people to master my stuff whenever I can, because sometimes you've just been listening to it too long, right? And your perspective is a little bit distorted. So with the whole mix, it's lacking the glue, and the glue is just basically that polishing stage. It's like almost like shoe polish to make it all shiny and make it pleasant, right? So you have a lot of great ideas and different sounds, but because you haven't put the glue on, they're not fitting together and they kind of stand out. They feel a little bit jumbled and chaotic because you really notice that they're not glued together. And so some things that you can do to fix that would be apply more bus effects on groups. For instance, your drums. Your drums sound like different drums in different spaces, right? So what you can do is you can put a reverb that goes to all of your drums, like an aux send reverb. You can put, if you use Ableton, you can use the effect like the drum bus, which is sort of like a multi-effect strip. I'm sure there's plenty of other, there's like CLA drums, any of those sort of channel strip things to play with, just to put on your overall bus to give it that glue, because right now I'm really noticing that your drums are not in the same space. And also some bus compression and parallel compression would really be good to make it punch more, because right now, as others have said, it's a little bit flat. Rags was saying in the chat. So I think, again, it's a good idea. It's definitely worth releasing, but please like go in and put some polish over top of all the different sections so that they're smooth and also so that they stand out at the same time.
I mean, as far as production stuff, you covered pretty much everything I was going to suggest as well. I really liked a lot of your glided sounds, the way they all sort of fed into each other and then stacked into the chords. I thought that was really nice. But one of the things with mixing is sometimes how you arrange it. And a lot of your sounds do end up bleeding together because their tails all extend into one another all the time, effectively. So, while you're going through tidying up the mix, also just take a look at, even if you have to freeze down the files themselves and just cut it off a little bit earlier just to give it that breathing room. And you can use reverb to fill in those gaps a little bit afterwards as well, so it's a subtler tail rather than a full-on synth. But I mean, otherwise, you can mostly get away with it with your envelopes, your attack, decay, sustain, release sort of stuff. The really, basics to sort of. Yeah.
I agree with you about the tails, but I did forget to say that what I really loved was those glidey sounds. I thought they were like, when the track started, I was just like, oh, like sweet, like that really hits the spot. So, I definitely wanted to leave you with some positive feedback. I didn't want you to think I was just coming in so hot, because I do really like.
Good cop, you're bad cop.
Good cop, bad cop. I think we changed which one we're doing at a time, but that's why we like it. Yeah. So just to mention, I see that I think somebody has actually tipped, and I didn't notice. I'm sorry about that, but shouts out to Disc Music Official. So you can give us a little tip and jump the queue. That is not against the rules. It helps support us because we do all kinds of workshops, feedback, hours of stuff for free. So it just helps us keep going a little bit. So I wonder if Disc is in the queue, and maybe Natty, you can start helping me look through the queue, because I am doing like 20 different things at once. And it's a good thing that since I was a kid, I have been singing, rapping, playing keys, DJing, and productions at the same time. Oh, there he is, Disc. All right, so Disc is right at the end. Disc is skipped to the front. So thank you. Disc has gotten the deluxe feedback.
Thank you for your patronage.
Yes, so the deluxe feedback option means that we will play the entire track and not talk over it, and we will not censor any of Natty's monologues or mine. So, all right, we're going to play this track called Star Trails, and the feedback requested is, I'm planning to do a full original vocal mix later this year with improved track mixing as well. This version is already set for release, but still let me know what I can change and improve. The current vocal is a loop from a sample pack and is cleared for release. Okay, cool. my God, sorry, I'm muted. Always has to happen once. All right, so starting again. I love this track. I think that it's great, and I think that Lowly Palace is a super good look to release it. I actually released a track with Stereotype on their album on there, and it's been one of my most played tracks. So I really, congratulations on that. It's going to be great. And the only thing I want to say is something that already has been said in the chat, which is that I suspect that the drums are a little bit strong. And it's weird, I never say this comment because usually people's drums are flat, they need to be punchier, but these drums are nice and healthy and strong, and maybe a slightly overpowering of the other stuff because it's so lovely and dreamy. And so I almost never give this kind of advice, but I would almost dial back on the drums. I would soften them a little bit, maybe like make the compressor just a little bit less, because you don't have to go for that full lo-fi burial sound, but I think that you could draw some inspiration because you have that same kind of lovely vibe, and maybe having the drums be just a little bit softer and rounder would be a really cool thing to try. What do you think, Natty?
I think that the bass was actually really overbearing, because you have all this really airy sounds, but you never really open up the track, which is something I always like to happen with this sort of more ambient styles of music. I'm trying to think of anything constructive to say, because for the most part I think you mixed down nailed it, and the actual progression, it resolved itself in a way that was very satisfying. I don't really have anything to recommend to improve it beyond what you've already suggested there.
Yeah.
So much for deluxe feedback, but I guess that's what happens when someone submits a track that's actually
ready for release.
The way there.
Yeah, no, you're doing great, and I just shouts out for that, because it's hard to get attention of labels these days. So it is a great cosign, and yeah, makes sense. So yeah, and feel free to please, submit any whips if you want more detailed feedback, because like Nathaniel said, it's pretty hard to give feedback on something that's so complete. But great job. Next up, we have Patrick Neveu, but please, there's been some people going crazy about the queue. Listen, this is a community event. We're here. Part of the fun is not just playing your track and leaving. It's kind of rude if you do that, Come hang out with us. Come give feedback to other people. That's why we love it here. That's why everybody is a community. So, if you have stuff to do, put it on in the background. Just chill with us, You will get on. We always get to everyone, I promise. So next up, we have Patrick Neveu, finished yesterday. All right, so another pretty much finished track, but we don't know what feedback you want. So let's go, Patrick.
Pick up the phone, call 911. Pick up the pick up the pick up the pick up the phone, call 911. Pick up the phone, call 911.
All right, Patrick. Nice little kind of dark vibes. Yeah, all my comments have already been said by others in the chat, and so I'm just going to take it to mean that my advice, we're a bunch of great minds thinking alike here. But basically, yeah, the stereo bass, like it's a cool idea, but as others have said, you should only do it on the top end. Like keep the bottom, keep the lower end mono. You don't really want low end kind of panning stereo like that. And there is also some problematic low end that you might not be able to hear on your headphones, but in my sub pack, it's kind of doing this weird little flapping rumble, and it's kind of hollow. And I actually had this with one of the other tracks, the first track that we were playing, or maybe the second track, I can't remember. Like you can really feel things on a subwoofer sometimes that you can't hear in headphones. Like you might be making tracks on speakers and think that you have a big sub bass, and then you actually don't have anything at all once you play it on headphones. But this is the reverse, right? So this is basically it's a little bit empty as well. So all our attention is kind of going to the weird flapping and rumbling. And I know that somebody else heard it. My other feedback would just be like, it needs more stuff, more ear candy. More things, because it kind of just stays the same, and it's pretty minimal, and I like the minimalism, but really well done minimalism needs little flourishes, needs some edits, things like that. So that would be my advice. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, I think that's consistent enough with how everyone is probably approaching this song. I think that this song, because a lot of the arrangement, the actual progression of the track is all set, and I think don't change that. You've got the overarching skeleton here. Now it's just getting into that nitty-gritty stage. It's a stage I personally hate, because you're not really writing anything new, you're just trying to improve what you've already got. And, you just have to knuckle down and do it if you want the best output, to be honest. That's basically all there is to it with this one.
Yeah, exactly. I would say just do another pass at it, I think the idea, it is definitely finished, but it needs detail. So don't be afraid to do detail. All right, we got Raindrop next. Says, I was going for a dark, grungy, cinematic doom vibe as usual. All right. I thought I did best with the final bridge into the big drop, but I welcome all criticism. I can't talk today. Sorry, everyone. All right, this track is insane. It's 5 minutes long, so I think we can do the radio DJ thing. Great ideas, but as a few others have said, there's definitely some mix down chaos going on. I'm getting some very weird low end stereo stuff, just like in the last track. I'm hearing like some bass kind of going in the sub region to one side, which is, you know, a little bit of a no-no. As we said before, you can do this on EQ separated bass, right? You can make triple buses, you can make chains in Ableton so that you can use multi-band effects, but put distortion on the mids and highs and maybe lay off on the low end, because you're getting all kinds of weird low end overlapping mud and distortion. So yeah, great sound design, but distortion. You don't really ever want distortion to make everything distorted. It's a really tricky balance. So I think you gotta take a little bit of a light hand with this and do a lot of notch filtering and EQs. Natty?
Yeah, it's a pretty mental track overall, but I mean, I think that something that for a lot of it was missing for me was the hook. And you established it very clearly in the breakdown bridgey bit with that arp. I think you need to pull that sort of thing forward and start seeing it through the rest of your track. Use it as sort of a counterbalance for your really aggressive, Transformer-esque, metal mashing, crashing sounds. Sort of to give us that anchor point, because until that, there isn't really a direction, and your arps give it that sense of direction because it actually helps maintain the tension in a way that your noises don't.
Yeah,
Because
and then and it keeps going, and it's just like it needs some contrast to me. Like I want to hear a little bit of a minimal space where just the track breathes, you know. And you could literally have breathing because it's so cinematic as it is. You could have a section with somebody just, you know. That's always a great thing to put in tracks like this.
I know, it's definitely aiming for that epic trailer vibe almost, but with a more aggressive dubsteppy bend.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for the cool music video. I really enjoy it when people submit music videos. We're going to move on. We definitely have a lot of people in the queue. Ooh, I actually gotta close the queue. Natty, can you oh, I closed it.
Yep,
the
there we
queue
go.
is
Sorry.
now closed. Yeah, so we usually get about 30 tracks in before Natty and I's ears start to turn into cotton wool. So we're going to move right along next to Biko Bizzo. Oh my goodness. Why is everyone torturing me? Is it just because I can't talk tonight? All right. Bako Bibizo, a track called Interplay. There are very few elements in the track, they say. I think I did a pretty good job of making it sound full, but I'd like any feedback on the mix and arrangement. Okay. All right, pretty original rhythmic cadences with this trance track. It is actually quite refreshing because normally the thing that drives me crazy about trance is that it always has the same rhythms and the same syncopation. So I think it's very cool that you're trying something different, but maybe have one tiny element that's more central, that's subtle, just to sort of like hold people together, because it kind of gets to that point where like you can get confused mentally of like, where's my attention supposed to go, where's the center of this beat. And so I think that maybe even just having like a very straight little percussion that holds it together would help. But other than that, I think, yeah, some of the mixed stuff is a little bit weird. When it drops, it seems to sit a lot better, but especially in the intro, a lot of the drum fills, a lot of the drums themselves, they seemed like they had some low end mud. They seemed like they were sort of muffled a little bit. I think there is a little bit of clashing with the bass and some of the lower drums and things like that. Natty, what did you think?
I mean, I actually had to turn it down a bit in the intro because that pad was really, really shrill.
Yeah, totally.
So, I mean, definitely take some of that high end off just a notch because it's just a little bit too extreme. The other thing is your dynamic between the bouncy bass, the boom, 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 boom bit, and your pads feels off. Like, the pads, because of their envelope, their attack, they come in afterwards, but it doesn't feel deliberate. It just feels like you've left the preset or whatever patch you've created where it is, and it stays that way throughout the whole track to the point where it's not really syncopating on a beat. It's just sort of a few milliseconds behind. So I think that the move there perhaps would be to actually sit and automate your attack curve, so that then you can create a deliberate push and pull between your bass and your pad. Mm-hmm. Because that would, well, you've already got a lot of drive and momentum, so that would enhance that, but it would also continue to further ground the track into a sort of central rhythm, because then there's a mathematical relationship between the two.
Yeah, I agree.
And then that just makes it easier to stack everything else, like this driving hats or any other percussion or whatever else. You know, you can, once you've carved that or one relationship, that establishes a rule, and then you can just build on it. It makes it easier.
Sounds very good. I agree with everything Nathaniel says tonight. You are on point. All right, we got a cue jumper up next. Our very own Chris the Wizard. Rags, I know you are so good to us. I'm just gonna put Chris on, and then you'll be next. And I love you, and we're gonna talk later. And I wish Rags didn't always have to work, because I really want him to come on feedback. I seriously am having problems today. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I need to do some like elocution
practice.
Yeah, jinx. How many times have you jinxed with the word elocution? It's like something that never happens ever. All right, Chris the Wizard, get the wax out your ear. Oh, indeed.
What are my chances?
Not good.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
You mean not good like 1 out of 100? I'd say more like 1 out of 1,000,000.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Phone screams on your ear. Five focus screams on your ear. Focus the wax on your ear. Get the wax on your ear. Wax on your ear. Clear the mind like a ear hair. Like a real hair. Wiggle five phone screams on your ear. Pull the talents in the wax on your ear. Screams on your ear. Pull the talents in the wax on your ear. Wax on your ear. Wax on your ear. Fire like a ear hair. Like a real hair. Five phone screams on your ear. Five phone screams on your ear. Five phone screams on your ear. Pull the talents in the wax on your ear.
Chiller track from Chris the Wizard. Thank you, my friend. I always love your memes, your entire composition. Really fun stuff to listen to and really attention grabbing. The only thing I have to say real quick is just, I think overall, I know that it is kind of like, you've tagged it alternative rock and stuff, and this could be a personal taste thing. I feel like I just want it to be a little bit softer and rounder overall. And by that, I mean like that whole upper mids kind of like, you know, 500 hertz to like 3K, kind of like the whole middle range seems a little bit forward to me. And then there's a little bit of sharpness to it. And I just want a little bit of softness. And for that, sometimes I go to these analog emulator plugins, you know, the ones that are modeled after classic compressors. Like, you know, it's crazy that a lot of people don't think about using an interesting compressor as a set timbral designer and texturizer, but different compressors really do have different responses and they give different characters to the sound. I mean, there's a reason why people are still spending like thousands of dollars on these analog boxes when there's VSTs available. But some of these, you know, Waves has some ones that are pretty good, like 1176 clones and then distortion. I like the NLS bus sometimes to sort of soften up and analog and round things out. But overall, I think it's a dope track. It's just slightly sharp, and that's the only thing I want to hear. Did you hear anything, Natty?
I mean, for me, I felt like it'd have been nice to have a moment where it was just the beat. I mean, you call it alternative rock, but I mean, some of this gives me a very old school hip hop vibe in the way it's written. And but you never really go in that direction. It's all very much just constantly piling on the robotic sounds and the saws and everything else. And you sort of bury your drums all the way underneath everything else.
Yeah.
And that can be a choice, but you don't have to do it throughout the whole track. You know, I think that's a really nice, swaggery sort of drum pattern. Also, how come every track you show us on stream is like self-congratulation, aren't I awesome? I'm Quiz the Wizard, because like you ended this one with like, yeah! Woo! It's a great energy, not gonna lie. You have some serious self-confidence in a good way, so nice job on that. But yeah, and you know, lean into the swagger more if that's the case, you know. Make us go like we're going out in our big like muscle cars or whatever and blasting out to the neighborhood, or I don't know. I mean, what is it the cool kids do these days? I don't know, because I was never a cool kid.
I still think that carrying a boombox over your shoulder, like if you go to like some thrift stores, you might be able to find one of those really large ones, and just walk down the street and make sure to be wearing a pair of overalls, but make sure the straps of the overalls are down and you're kind of sagging. Is it giving away that I was a teenager in the 90s?
I mean, Depop is a thing now. I mean, apparently retro is in again, so I mean, I think you're back to being current.
Nice. We got Rags up next, and thank you. Sorry, Rags, I didn't mean to push you to the back. You're always so great to us. Love you so much, Rags. And this is Rags saying, of all the unfinished stuff I make, this is the one whip I will actually finish because I feel it embodies the vibe, writing style, and thoughtfulness that I love most in music and represents the most honest part of myself. The feedback I'm looking for today is your opinion of its likability factor and points I can improve on in the mix and master, most specifically with regards to vocal processing. All right, check it out.
First it was spawn eating, but consequence in the dirt. Destined for dead roses a week ago in the earth. Went from tucking and goosing to rolling it up and boozing and clock for my nightmares. Letting it blow through them. Lighter walks in the path, but shade will fall of the trail. Whispers in the dark, but don't say a word when you tell. Gotta make it to heaven, become equipped with the shells. Better days were before me, I gotta make it myself. Ay, blow a candle, make a wish now. 16, all I really got my stick now. 19 on the road, doing tricks, wow. Get a 30 on me, I know the shit's wild. Ay, blow a candle, make a wish now. 16, all I really got my stick now. 19 on the road, doing tricks, wow. Get a 30 on me, I know the shit's wild. It's the concept of time where history's on loop. I'm just another grain from the earth that gets looped to. And why was I blessed with the birthright of punishment? Reward for your faith if you put up with it. Hey, if you put up with that, you gon' put up with that. You gon' put up with that. Hey, you gon' put out range, lil' mama, I'm so astounded. Used to pop my collar till I put a chain around it. Socks hellbound, just put them in my manila. But day one, I'm cruising up out of Villa. Get it how you live it, you living it, just existing. Take the fruit of label for somebody else, kiss it. Get it how you live it, you living it, just existing. I got 7 reasons your psyche can come and kiss some. Hey, blow a candle, make a wish now. 16, all I really got my stick now. 19 on the road doing tricks wild. Get a 30 on me, I know the shit's wild. Hey, blow a candle, make a wish now. 16, all I really got my stick now. 19 on the road doing tricks wild. Get a 30 on me, I know the shit's wild.
Another slapper from our boy Rags. Super likable. I mean, I already know your likability factor is like super high as a human being, so I don't see why it wouldn't translate into your music. Yeah, I really think that your voice, you're kind of almost like, it happens a lot when you're a vocalist and a producer. People tend to really mishear the levels and the power of their own voice because either it goes two ways, right? Either you've heard it a million times and you think that it's super clear and loud, but it's not loud enough, or you put it too loud because your balance is off in the other direction. But in this case, I think that always I want to tell you to push your vocals more to the front and to thicken them, and everything overall could use some thickness. 2 C's, definitely thick with 2 C's. I want some like saturation. Like there's so many really good multi-band plugins like FabFilter Saturn. I really like that one. Unfiltered Audio Indent is a really cool one by Plugin Alliance. And just put some warmth. And obviously, as we said in previous reviews, split bus things so that you're not putting saturation on the low end of your bass, for instance. But with your vocals, you could definitely use some really snappy compression. This is one thing that people don't always think about, is manipulating the envelope of a compressor specifically to be better for vocals. So with rapping, you want to use higher ratios, almost like as if you're compressing a bass guitar. Anything that's percussive and punchy, you want higher ratios, right? And then you can also do this little trick that I do sometimes where I actually lengthen the attack. And this is a trick that people don't think of because they think, oh, the drums go by really fast or the vocal goes by really fast, because drums and rap vocals are very similar treatment. And they go, I should have a short attack because I want my drum goes by really fast. But the thing is if you have a longer attack, you can almost have the compressor be purposefully a bit late and allow the original volume to spike through before you press it down. So this is transient shaping in a certain way. And I would actually recommend trying some slightly longer attacks and higher ratios on a compressor, and that'll kind of thicken it up in a certain way. And from there, you can start playing maybe with having a dry signal in the middle and then having your affected, wispy, sort of the technique that you have now as doubles. That's what I would do. Natty is also into vocal production, so interested to see his thoughts.
I mean, I've definitely heard a lot of people, especially in the more indie sphere, where they're not outsourcing their mix downs, burying their vocals, which is usually a shame because the people doing it always have such great things to say. And I also find your question of likability rather interesting, because the song itself is quite a melancholic song. So saying, how likable am I when you're singing effectively a doomer anthem is a very interesting question. I mean, I think the question is more, am I relatable? And in that case, I think this track is conveying itself rather effectively. You've got a pattern to it that sort of builds up this story of how, you're just getting by, but if you keep trying it, you can actually make things better. But it's still kind of doom and gloom right now, and that's pretty much a universal feeling at any era. So I mean, as far as relatability, you nailed it.
Yes, very relatable. We love you always. We got an Avalon, a newcomer, I think, to Feedback and Friends, mostly looking for feedback about the kick. And this is a 7.5-minute song, so they told me to skip through the first couple of minutes, and then we'll do a little bit, and then we'll do our usual sort of talking over it. So let's just see. I'm going to skip to this little breakdown here and start from here. So just know, Natty, that this is not the beginning of the track. There was a first part, but it's long. So, full disclosure, this is not my usual genre, but I can tell you just from walking by this stage at festivals that you definitely nailed the spirit of the kick. That kick is always blasting through the woods as I walk by on my way to the jungle stage. So again, full disclosure, this is not my thing, but I think that you've got a really good approximation of the style. I think that your elements are in place, but the overall mix is a little bit dull. It's a little bit like it's not crisp at the top like I want it to be. And the thing with this kick like this, which is really powerful, is you can maybe even turn it down a little bit because it's sort of eating everything else. So I think, I think I would just look for some other stuff on the top, maybe just little details stuff, because all I pretty much hear is this kick. Natty?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I also think, I know it's not necessarily always noticeable, especially when you're in that zone of just vibing to the kick, but techno producers do actually make minor alterations to that kick as they go along. It can have an evolving sound palette of its own.
Yeah.
You don't have to just keep the sample as it sounds with that level of distortion. You can up the saturation, you can change how you compress it, because you can automate a compressor in a DAW as well. You can basically automate everything in a track like this and get away with it if you creep it gradual. I can't speak today either.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as would people vibe to this? Yeah, but I mean, it's now a case of, am I going to accept just the sort of, this is a techno track, or elevate it into this is an amazing techno track?
Yeah, I think you could push it a little bit harder, and you could add just a little bit more textures. And, I like these vintage 90s synths, but do some fun things with them instead of just repeating them, like do some little glitches or change ups or chop them up just in small parts, right? I understand like you don't want to break the hypnosis, but there are ways to just put tiny little things to keep the interest going. So as Enderman says, this is basically if 1997 was a song. Oh man, comment of the week maybe. I love the things that people say here. So thank you, nice of you to join us. We hope you come back again sometime. Next up, we got another favorite. We've got Cross Couloir. Oh, it's nice to see you, my friend. A track is called Microplastic. Hey, I feel very strongly about microplastics. One of the other projects I'm doing is actually going to bring Web3 technology to environmental cleanups and verifying amount of plastic cleanups of the beach, because there's so much darn plastic on our beach. So I don't know if you just randomly named it that, but I just wanted to tell you that I really appreciate it, because we need to pay more attention to microplastics. So specific feedback looking for. I don't think, just says, I'd like any feedback on the mix and arrangement. Okay. All right, I think this one is a talkable one at this point because you can tell that there's still like some ear candy and elements that need to come into it. But look, I gotta be honest, folks. I could have used a little more cowbell. Sorry, I've been waiting for like weeks to have the opportunity to say that. Just kidding. So yeah, I like how clean it is. I like the minimalism. I think now it's just a case of the usual mixing stuff, you know, a little bit of more parallel compression, a little bit of tiny little noises, maybe some foley, maybe some things just to give it interesting organic timbres that are really subtle but sit underneath all this super synthy stuff. Natty, I'm gonna let you take over because I think this one I still feel like there's so many different ways that he could go. I hesitate to give them advice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, don't want to write people's songs for them because that'd be weird. I think that here you could really ramp up the energy level. You're sort of doing it with your pads, but because we've already heard them before, they're familiar, and so they don't really add any complexity to the track. So maybe the key here is to start using similar sort of timbral quality with I don't know, it's a sort of a soul sound. You know, little arps and things that follow your hat patterns perhaps, or back in and out with your cowbells and your clicks. You know, so if you've got all the pieces here, it's just about layering it more to make it more intense. And water foley, that's a good idea as well.
Yeah, I think little water droplets would go nicely with that clean sound and give it that like cool little texture. I love that idea. Yeah.
But yeah, it was basically if you want to build up to something, then you have to make the journey worthwhile. And I think that's the final thing you have to work out with this track.
Yeah.
What's the destination?
I agree. That's the quote of the week. You have to make the journey worthwhile. I love your comforting Scottish voice saying that. I'm like, please make my journey worthwhile, Natty. Oh.
And she found, unfortunately, that this time the journey was not.
Amazing. We got a newcomer. Okay, wait. Zine, I gotta ask you something. It's supposed to be your turn. But it said the title is Kygo Goes to Africa, and I just need to double check that this is not going to contain any Kygo samples because that is going to give us some strikes for sure. So I just want to make sure. Can you just confirm to me in the chat that this is not going to cause us any grief later on because we can't have any bootlegs? And
Kygo hitting us with a banhammer.
Yeah. So Zine is typing right now, but just while they're typing, I'll just say the reminder, like, it's not that we don't love remixes and bootlegs and mashups, but it's just, okay, so Zine says it's just for the memes. All right, memes are fine. We love memes as long as they don't get us copyright strikes. Zine would like to be roasted as hard as possible. Oh, this is something we usually don't do. We're nice people here at Feedback and Friends, but I mean, if it is by request, what are we going to do? It says, I'm still quite new to this. Hasn't been a year since I started. I'm really struggling with synths and sound design, so please give me feedback. I was also in a bit of a hurry to get it done, so there might be something I won't even like myself. All right, Kygo, hold on a second. This is going to the different one. There we go. So this is actually perfect background talking music at this point in the meme. So I'm gonna start on this. So apparently this track was made because of a comment made by another user in the feedback, which is amazing. So just the phrase "Kaigo goes to Africa" inspired you to write a track. I think that's so much fun. So thank you for doing that. It's freaking hilarious. What I was gonna say to you is something that you finally did a little bit in like minute 2, but overall this track is all kind of on top of itself. Like everything is just sort of happening like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, like, and what you really need to do just to get more interest is more off syncopated notes. Dun, 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 dun. In between, right? In between the main grid beats, because right now everything is just kind of going boom, boom. It's almost like a car salvage company like pressing down the dun 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 dun. Like I just want to hear a little bit more syncopation, more percussion, especially in the intro. If it's Kaigo Goes to Africa, put in some African percussion, go all the way with this meme, you know? And in the pocket, as Schlappa said, that's also a good thing. Like that's not necessarily always the same thing, but yes, just something a little bit more kind of syncopated and bouncy to give you a little bit of relief from the counting every single beat in the bar. We don't want to count every single note division on the grid in every single bar of the song, right? And I think that you had a really good point sort of in the middle where you had the lead coming in where it got more like dancey and bouncy, and then it went back to being like straight on top of that. So obviously, you know, you finished it fast. It's not mixed. There's a lot of stuff I could say about the mix, but I think before you even mix it, you really need to play around with the parts, because part of what's making the mix dull is that everything is sitting on top of each other. So I have a feeling that if you just take some of the sounds and like pull them apart and syncopate them, that will already clear up some things. And yeah, as Barrett said, also the notes and the piano chords hitting all at once makes it obvious that it's MIDI. It sounds fake, and same with the guitar. So playing with velocity can really help. Those of you using DAWs that have MPE, MIDI polyphonic expression, which is the new polyphonic MIDI, you don't need to have a Rolly C-board or those fancy controllers to use it. You can actually draw it. Like in Ableton, you can actually go into the new Ableton and there is an automation lane for MPE, and you can do like pitch bends per note in a chord, and you can do just different things per note to make things sound a little more real. So I would almost just play around with that just because it's really fun, and not a lot of people are taking advantage of that yet. So Natty, did you feel that Kaigo made it to Africa?
No, I actually agree a bit with Valk said, who said Kaigo gets lost on the way to Africa, need more Africa. And then Shinidi also made me laugh with, I kind of want to hear Skrillex goes to Germany. Like,
I think
would
that
that just be Rez?
It would be like, no, it'd be like terrible dubstep with polka rhythms. That's what it would be like. It would be like, ah, bum, 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 bum. That's what Skrillex goes to Germany would sound like. That's my beatbox interpretation.
As far as my feedback, I'm definitely on board with more syncopation. I mean, you play it very much. I mean, it's not even a house rhythm, which is surprising given it was meant to be Kaigo Goes to Africa. I was expecting more of a play between the kick and the hats, perhaps, because it's one way to sort of create an offbeat. But I also thought that during your more down-tempo section, rather than playing on a 4 on the floor, go 2-step. You know, borrow from dubstep-y drums a little bit in that the way they go boom, ch, boom, ch, or hip hop or whatever. You know, just something more in the drums to give it that flow.
Yeah. The comments are on fire today. Thank you everybody for being so
Dubstep in later, Hosen.
Dubstep in later, Hosen. Yeah, indeed. I mean, dubstep in Germany, I think actually go together. We should have like some sort of weird challenge like that. It's almost like an episode of Chopped or like those cooking shows where you just get given like ingredients and cultures. I'd be like, all right, your basket ingredients are dubstep, Estonia, and icebergs. Natty, let's do that. Oh my god, that would be so fun.
Oh my god, the thing is you need 3 judges, and one of them has to be a douche.
Oh, we can find one. I mean, we have plenty in our Discord. We definitely don't have we don't have a shortage of douchey friends, that's for sure. All right, we got Chris Tate up next. Thanks for waiting, Chris. Chris, I don't know if we've had you in the feedback before, so either way, welcome. And I like that your name is Tate Cello because I love cello. Chris will be releasing this on an EP with a friend soon, and would love to get some feedback or any comments of things that they should keep doing or stay away from. All right. Let's check it out.
Attention, everyone. This is an emergency broadcast. The unpleasant noise you are about to hear coming from your radio is not a mistake. Please do not turn off your radio, but turn up the volume on your receiver as high as it can go, so that you can make the sound we broadcast as loud as possible.
Wow.
Wow.
That definitely, I think, as has been said, maybe most original song of the night so far. I really, really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the what you're doing right and what you need to stay away from. I would say, first of all, what you're doing right is you have some really nice, round, analog-ish kind of sounds. I love that sort of vintage, what somebody called it cop step. I love this like kind of 80s genre, and I do think you had a million crazy ideas as well, like, and somehow it all fit together, and there was some really cool chord progressions, ear candy moments. I mean, I think that there's a little bit of mixing stuff that you can do, but creatively that was, as Cosmin Music says, a straight up adventure is a great way to describe it. One of the things I think is that you have so many big elements that this dubstep drums near the end, they get a little bit buried and muffled. So what you can do sometimes is besides just side chaining the kick to the sub bass, which a lot of people do, you can make a side chain group for all your pads and all your leads, or maybe even different groups. And you can make a side chain from both the kick and the snare, not as deep as you would for a bass, but just a little bit of a dip, so that every time the kick and the snare hit, the whole pads and stuff dips. And you can make the envelope really short as well, like if you don't want people to notice it. You know, it's just about dipping that out and giving it a little bit of space to pump, because I think the only thing that's missing for me is being like really like sassy and spicy in the mixing department, because creatively it's totally there, but it's not bad. I mean, there's different parts of it that are really clean and others that are muffled. So I think like the intro part was pretty clean and louder, and then because you had so much stuff going in the dubstep part, that's when sort of over compression might have kicked in and it sort of flattened everything out and took out the dynamic range. So some tricks that friends have who do really complex tracks like this is don't be afraid to do like a gain utility throughout the track and manually gain groups up and down so that you can compress a little bit less overall on the master. Like, you know, you could have a utility gain in like the first part. You could have the sidechain compressor only switch on in the dubstep part. Like, don't be afraid to sort of progress your compressors and EQs, because a lot of people will automate reverbs and delays and effects like that, but they forget that, like, hey, maybe even the first part of your track needs a different compressor on the drums than the second part of the track because it's so different. So it's totally okay to have more than one compressor, to alternate between different compressors on the same channel or group throughout the track. Like, because you have so much going on, you are probably going to have to treat different parts differently before getting to the end result where you limit and sort of smooth them all out. So, Natty.
I really enjoyed it. It's very, very hooky. That did remind me of a few other pieces. I mean, some of the comparisons with like Power of Stellar was also, I felt it was quite apt. Also, Ren Drop's Peter Rabbit Goes Clubbing vibes. What is it with the comments today? I think for me, obviously, it all ties back into the mixing a little bit as well, when some of your areas of your track sounded a bit hollow. Especially that climax. I wanted to be really immersed in the sort of the stereo of your synths and the booming of your drums and your bass, and you didn't quite get there yet. But I mean, you say you only just sort of tacked that bit on, you haven't really spent a lot of time with it yet. So I mean, that's something you will get to. I mean, it's a really fun track. You know, I enjoyed that.
It is. It was so much fun. So fun is that's the thing, is like a good idea is priceless. The mix can always be fixed, but you can't take a great mixed, boring track with no musicality and make it better. So I think you've done the hard part. Good job.
Hey.
Yay. All right. Next up, we have Dawn. Sorry, it's hard to tell sometimes. I hate, this is my grievance, okay? I's and L's, certain fonts, they look the same, which is why sometimes if you don't put my name in all caps or in all small letters, it looks like Thresha. So I have been called Thresha many times because I's and L's look the same. Cool story, bro. I know. So we got Dawn. Would like to know if they are doing too much or not. Other than that, just basic feedback. All right. And it's called Young Kaio Kankan type beat. All right. Oh, this is definitely a beat made for rappers. It makes me feel like rapping, you know, like lean, like this is what Natty and I thinking of your track, cause you're here sitting with your friends on the feedback, and we sitting all night and we telling you the kick is a little bit distorted, and I kinda hear the click, a little bit distortion, a little on my mind. It feels like it's too forward. I think you've left behind space for a vocalist. I'm a junglist. What can I say? Natty, it's your term. Flow.
I didn't really know that this style was a thing. Combining 8-bit synths with a hip-hop beat is... Oh. I'm sorry, I'm terrible at freestyle.
Somebody please clip that. By the way, I do this in the car only these days. I used to be a jungle rapper when I was younger, but now I mostly do it on road trips when I have to do long drives. So this is mostly for Xavi's information, but everything I said was true. I think your bass is a little bit too distorted, and it's kind of just making everything a little bit overall too distorted. I love those simple sine synths, but I think that you have to create a little bit more like anything, even if they just filter. Pitch bend is always a good get for that classic 90s rap thing. Just a little bit more dynamics. And Barrett always coming in with the lovely advice saying volume of elements is a little bit static, play with velocity and dynamics, take that main motif melody and develop a little more to give the track more progression and story, which would help move the track along and would support the vocals if they were present. Natty, do you have any other feedback to that?
Yeah, I have a little bit more. I mean, as I said, I actually wasn't aware that this 8-bit on top of hip-hop thing was a thing at all. And my brain just got confused. But I think that's then the reference point. You shouldn't be looking at hip-hop tracks for how you produce this. You should be looking at old-school game soundtracks and how they tweak their elements to sort of make them more variable, because obviously they were working with limited sound fonts, and they had to give the illusion of a full orchestral sort of sound where everything was meshed and layered and alternating, and basically you want to mimic that here a bit. Yes, you've got the thumping 808s, but they're almost beside the point. Any hip-hop track can use an 808, but if you're capturing this 8-bit vibe, then you have to really go the full hog, I think. And
yeah, like some like bit redux and bit crunch and all those like Nintendo effects, I think would be great.
Yeah, and they did that all to give the illusion of depth when they just couldn't achieve it any other way. Yeah,
for sure. Agreed. I don't know why I became the Scottish one right there, because that's definitely not me out of the two of us. Good feedback, Nathaniel.
I found out about Scots Wikipedia.
Scots Wikipedia? What's that?
Yeah, it's cursed is what it is.
Tell me some Scottish slang. Teach us a new Scottish word that we wouldn't know.
Aberdeen actually has its own dialect, and there's some really weird ones.
Natty, come on! It's supposed to be in your vernacular.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, I suck at this.
Natty, it's clearly not a freestyler.
No, I'm sorry.
Listen, I had this phase when Train Spotting, I'm going to make myself really old here. Train Spotting, the movie came out. I got obsessed with it and I read the book, and the whole book is written in phonetic Scottish. I don't know if you ever read the book, but at the end of it, for like 2 weeks, I had a Scottish accent. It's just like, you just read it and you hear it out loud in your head. It's crazy. Anyways, I won't do it now. I'll save you. I already freestyled once tonight, so I gotta save a little bit for the tension. We got Schlop in the house next. I'm really stoked. This is for a remix comp that was already due yesterday, but if anything sticks out, I can still change it. All right, rock out. Oh my gosh, Schlop. This is wild. This is like bananas. I hope you'll join us in the sample loop making challenge in a couple of weeks. I would love to hear your stuff mixed up into Matt's jams because your sound design is so good. And I feel like every track you give us is better too. Like this one has an amazing glue to it. Like this is really good sound design, really well EQ'd, really crisp on the top and really heavy on the bottom. And also it all flows together so well. It sounds like one continuous rippling bass wave. And, you know, the best feedback I can give is similar to FF4C, who said, not even going to give feedback, just going to walk out. Because seriously, like every time I hear your stuff is when I really miss Denver and things like that there. And it just like brings me right back to that dance floor. So it's sick. I mean, I love to hear what Nathaniel says because I just like, it's awesome.
I mean, I had to take a moment there to try and remember I have to be serious and actually give feedback on this stuff and not just laugh about the memes, but because otherwise I was going to say works with books, but...
Works with books. Works with books.
I can't believe we got her to say that.
Works with books.
But, yeah, I mean, overall it was a very, very satisfying production. You had all your stereo field and your frequency spectrum covered, and none of it was too harsh. I mean, these headphones emphasize high end a lot, so when it's really harsh, it's like blows my ears out. But your song didn't do that. I think you nailed that, so that was good. I don't really have anything negative to suggest in the arrangement. I mean, this is sort of it's using very moderny sort of bro step sounds, but it's a deep dub progression, I think. Would that be a correct assessment?
Yeah, I mean, it's really wook bass, and in the US that is what we call it. But it's made for like big sound systems, but it's got such a nice movement to it, and that really like that's the feeling. This type of music is so physical, you know. It's like it's almost hard to listen to this without a sub pack because I need to feel that bass. So Yeah, you did an awesome, awesome job. Not much to say. Congratulations. Yay. You'll probably win this remix contest. I don't see why you wouldn't. I would vote for you for sure. Next up, we have JJ DeBoss, aka Jason Alexander. Isn't that the guy from Seinfeld? Doesn't he play like George? So any specific feedback? No. I mean, if you can tell us in the chat if you want any specific feedback, but we're just going to take a listen, and it's called 2:35 a.m. Ooh, Jason, that is definitely a really nice kind of flowy vibe beat. I really enjoyed the energy of that. I do think overall the whole thing was quite muddy. I think that your kick has a lot of sub in it. Like the sub pack is just going absolutely nuts with your kick. And I see kind of like you've got a lot of space in there, so maybe you want to have that strong kick, but I think you can still dial it back a bit because the whole mix needed some crispness. My ears were sort of starving for some sparkly highs, a little bit more just crispy stuff to balance out the soft roads and the deep drums, because I really like the kind of rim shot and I like the lo-fi vibe, but it's tricky. Like you don't want to be muddy. Lo-fi has to actually be cleanly mixed and then dirtied afterwards. So I would take a look a little bit at everything, go through everything and just cut some low end, clean it up, do some not TQing, and just kind of get surgical on these elements. And as Zavi said, we'd love some vocals or some kind of lead element to add something to the track. And then after that, I think just some Foley, some textures, like it's a little bit empty sometimes. And I don't think you need to necessarily put a strong part in there, but I would put some textural noise sounds.
So,
Natty, where are you?
I'm here. I'm here.
Hi.
Anyway, I'm okay, thank you. But I'm actually glad that you didn't go in a generic lo-fi hip hop direction with this. But then obviously with the mixed down stuff, it sort of drags it back down into that territory. When you introduce those sort of bigger chords and the sort of really stable bass sound, it actually gave it a really cinematic angle to this. And I think if that's the direction you want to go to, I mean, it's the same as one of the other tracks we reviewed tonight, where it's about that whole build-up and destination thing. So, you maybe want to have a final section that really does ramp up that use of space and depth. I think that the biggest thing with your kick as well is it's you've got a reverb on it, but you've not really tamed that reverb. I mean, you can do that, but it just blurs into everything else. So what you need to do is set your reverb onto a separate bus and then sidechain other elements to it so that they duck the reverb tail, so that they makes it easier to keep it all tidy.
Very good advice. Yeah, they're just a little bit of cleaning up will do wonders, and that little bit of sparkle will give that kind of dreamy feeling and really start to accentuate. What is wrong with me today? Accentuate. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Like, did you believe I'm a voice actor? I don't know I think it's my sleep. That's my only excuse. My sleep debt is a little bit high this week for some reason, but anyways,
that definitely can do bad.
I love you all. Sorry I can't talk. Good thing that you all make music and I can just sit here silently at least half the time. We're so happy. So Bloodfire is up next. They would like to get feedback on their breakdown and overall idea of the track. All right, cool.
Yeah, now it's one way.
Check this out.
So you grind for this mic, one wave, and now you feel it all the time, trying to live your life while you battle things inside. Yeah, now it's one way.
All right. I think I'm really old, but this track is like overwhelming me. So I need to there's a lot going on. You got some nice strengthier drums. Again, I'm a little out of my style wheelhouse on this, but as Enderman said, this lead synth is very resonant and it kind of hurts when it kicks in. I'm sure it's probably caused Natty a little bit of pain since we both have these high-end sensitive headphones. So I would say, calm that down. It's been an hour and 45 minutes and we haven't mentioned dynamic EQ yet. So maybe now is a good time to mention it. Dynamic EQ is great when you have a lead with different notes because they can be specific to the frequency you're on. It's just like a regular EQ if you haven't used it, except it has thresholds and ratios and things that you might recognize from a compressor that allow you to apply different EQ gains to different notes in your synth. So I would look at that. TDR Nova, our favorite, it's free. FabFilter Pro Q will also do that if you have that. So I would try just really taming that. I think that the rest of it, like it's just, for me, it just seems like there's a lot going on, but I know that it's also the style. So it's hard for me to give, I know I'd love to hear from some people in the chat who are more experienced with hardstyle, but for me, I got really overwhelmed in the last part of it. And that part was just like, and I couldn't focus, I couldn't concentrate, and maybe that's the point. I don't know. Natty, are you a big hardstyle closet fan or anything?
I mean, well, it's not particularly something I listen to all the time. I have listened to a lot more of the more hardcore stuff and heavier trance tracks. For me, it sounds like you wrote the two sections separately. I mean, you asked for feedback on the breakdown, the overall idea track. I think the idea itself works, but it's almost like right now you wrote your breakdown second and then didn't go and tweak the other stuff to match it as well. Because you basically engineered yourself a key change, but I don't think the track has warranted it. Because you're that kick, you have tuned the kick, but you've tuned it in a very dissonant manner, and then you go into the nice cinematic stuff, and that's all flicked into a different key. And I think you need to match that. I mean, that last section, actually, when you had really high tension before the outro that Isha was speaking over, the really dissonant kick worked well there, and then you responded as well. You still shifted it up as the end to resolve it. That worked, but you didn't do that in your intro and lead into that breakdown. And it sounds really off as a result, in my view. I mean, it's like, it's not a major tweak, I don't think. It's just make sure that it is actually in the same scale as the cinematic bit, and then you can flirt with the eternal stuff.
Flirt with the eternal. You're such a soundbite tonight. I can hardly talk. I'm just like, and you're like,
I've stolen all your eloquence.
You're like siphoning my energy. I don't know what, but good thing you're on fire. Okay, so we have a queue jumper. Big shout out to Visionary. Thank you so much for the tip. So we are going to skip you. So for those of you who keep asking about the queue, it does get a little murky because some people give us a little donation and we skip them, but we are pretty well through it. And, those of you asking are not that far away, so I will keep updating you all. Please do not fret. All right, so Visionary, what you got for us tonight? It says it's a bootleg, but he FUCKED'd it up real good. So apparently SoundCloud and YouTube have not taken it down. So all right, I'm going to trust you on this one. But if we get a strike, I know where you live. Actually, that's BS. I have no idea where you live. All right, Visionary, let's check out your whip.
Shock, horror, if you really thought that growing up would be easy. All that drama can make you wanna lock your door and throw the key in. Hide away while you're safe, where your heart doesn't break. You're afraid, it's okay. Everybody's scared, so dance in the dark, dance in the dark, dance in the dark. Party with your fears, dance in the dark, dance with the dark, dance in the dark. Everybody's scared, so dance in the dark, dance in the dark, dance in the dark. Party with your fears, dance in the dark, dance with the dark, dance in the dark. Everybody's scared, so dance in the dark, dance in the dark, dance in the dark. Party with your fears, dance in the dark, dance with the dark, dance in the dark. You're hurting, closing the curtains, wanna keep it secret. Can't keep it bottled, pain is hard to swallow. You cross your heart without bleeding. Hide away while you're safe, where your heart doesn't break. You're afraid, it's okay. Everybody's scared, so dance in the dark, dance in the dark, dance in the dark. Party with your fears, dance in the dark, dance with the dark, dance in the dark.
Woo, that was Visionary, really think that you have such a great command of space. It's like, it's interesting to hear whips because I love to hear how people work. It's kind of peeling back the layers of the onion. And for me, when I have a whip, it's like a garbage dump. It's like a katamari of overdone elements. And for me, my idea session is like a 4-year-old finger painting. And then I sit there and clean stuff up and make space. But for you, it's like you produce the track the whole way with the right amount of space in mind. So I really respect that. And I think the space is great. The bass line, I love that little bend to it. It's super catchy. It's very loud, as your stuff usually is. So I might almost like just a tiny bit back off on it, because the problem is when you're just the loudest thing in the game, sometimes they turn you down on these streaming services. And I mean, not that you could possibly release this, but it's a thing that I've learned, is to back off the LUFs just a little bit. And I know it's a whip, so you probably just threw a limiter on it, but I mean, it's sick. I really loved it. I don't have much more feedback than that. Natty?
I mean, especially with bootlegs, I find them really hard to give feedback on because, well, one, obviously it's never going to be officially released, but also because there's a lot of limitations with doing bootlegs. I mean, there'd be some tweaks to the vocals, but I'm worried that if you cut too much out because you've already had to isolate them, then you take away any beef that the vocals have. I mean, do you have any tips there, Isha, for dealing with slightly dodgy vocals?
Well, I mean, I can tell that he like pitched it way down and did some stuff. I would almost go further on the wonkiness. Like when I can't, isolate it in the way I want, I would just go all the way, and I would like put some weird, not just vocoders, but like pitch remapping and frequency shifting and just weird stuff. Like for instance, Melda, we talked about Melda last week. They have a M-Morph plugin that lets you sort of go back and forth and spectrally morph between two different sources. So I think what could be really cool is you could have the vocal on one side and you could have like a wah wah electric guitar on the other, and then you could like morph back and forth between them, and you could just kind of use that weirdness and just go nuts on it. Like sometimes when you don't have a choice, you just got to run with it. Back when I was in audio school, I had a project where I had to use the 2-inch tape machine, which is something that people don't even learn about anymore. Like they don't even really there's like one place that makes reels for these tape machines, but they sound great and they're a thing. Anyways, I screwed it up. I did the whole thing wrong. I had like a 3-hour session and I wired so many things backwards that by the time I figured it out, I barely had enough time to zero the room. So I kind of just went with the distortion that I got, and I told my teacher that I was going for like a Rick Rubin 90s grunge vibe, and I kind of just went with it, and I managed to pass. So I mean, with bootleg vocals, I kind of feel the same way. It's like instead of just trying to fix everything, just own it and just get even crazier. So that would sort of be my tip: is just go nuts, go nuts on that stuff. So you have any other comments on that?
No, I mean, I think that covers it. I like that advice.
Yeah, me too. All right.
There's your quote of the night.
My quote of the night. I finally managed to talk. All right. No, I seriously feel like so. I don't know. Anyways, let's just not talk about me not being able to talk, because then I have to talk some more, which will further uncover the fact that I am unable to talk today. We have Jester up next, a track. He's asking, is this release worthy? Oh, that's kind of a loaded question. I don't really like to say those questions, but probably it is. It may not be right now, but we will tell you what we think. So this track is called Blame. Well, this is definitely something that could be release worthy pretty soon, I think. It's got a really nice vibe. It makes me feel kind of like summer dancing, like it's very appropriate. This is something that I would probably hear out in the clubs in Spain where I'm living right now. But I do think, as the $1 million phrase, it could use a little more ear candy. Nathaniel, can you please say ear candy? You haven't said it today yet.
Ear candy.
Yeah, little turnarounds, little textures, and it's interesting how like some weeks there's a theme of the advice that we give, and we kind of give the same advice over and over again. But something that was pointed out in the chat by Shanidi was saying the bass also needs to be in mono under 200 hertz. We've had a lot of weird like stereo sub basses coming in today, and this is something that like you just do not want any. You don't want any stereo on under 200 hertz, basically. Like there's no reason for anything to be stereo. You just have your kick and your sub there, and those need to sit firmly in the middle of your track. Now, I mean, if your channel is stereo, but you have like a mono sound in it, like you don't need to put something in mono. But if you have stereo effects going on your bass, then you need to do that. So some people do splitting their bass into two channels. They have a clean sub mimicking the melody line of the other bass, which is just the top and the mids. And some people like me just take one bass and split bus it into a rack. So in Ableton, I have, low, mid, and high. I use a plugin. Oh, by the way, Nathaniel's going to do plugin of the week. I totally forgot about that. But I use a plugin called Gaffle. And it's basically just a band separator that doesn't have phase issues. It's nice and clean, and it just allows me to make anything multi-band because I have my sub split, my mid split, my high split, and I can put separate effects on each one of them, which also gives it more dimension. So I would say, yeah, like just a little bit more flourishes and tips and tricks, and that'd be really it for me. I think it's a really pleasant track. Natty?
Yeah, I think that you covered it mostly as well. There was another comment as well that Enderman made. The reverb on the claps could use some side chaining to the clap so that the transient comes through a lot more. I agree. I mean, they did sort of mush together a little bit. And with a tech house track like this, a lot of them do tend to use a sharper clap or click sound. I mean, the other thing would be something similar where you can keep that clap sound how it is and layer in a second sound on top, and then you could start maybe alternating them as part of that ear candy. We'll do it in ASMR, ear candy. But or you could do a little slight snap on top of your clap, just ever so slightly to create its own transient. You keep that as quiet and dry as you can, and layer on top, and it just creates a little neat transient sandwich.
Transient sandwich. You've just like written album titles for an entire EP, like "The Journey Worth It," Transient Sandwich. I love you tonight. You're great. Amazing. So Transient Sandwich, maybe the meme, maybe Zine will make another track in the next couple of weeks called Transient Sandwich. We can only dream. All right. Thanks for patiently waiting, everybody. We have Voxend up next. Says, I feel like I'm getting better at processing and mixing in the genre. There's an early master on it, but I'm still mixing the beginning. I'm focusing on getting that really big sound without mud or soup. So hopefully this mix sounds like it's going in the right direction in the drops. Okay. All right, Natty, why don't you go first on this one?
Okay, so I mean, I think that your mix is going in the right direction. Right now, your main issue is spatial. Like, your vocals, they're sitting right in the middle, on top of your kick and on top of your bass. When you're going to get the big sound, I don't think you need to keep them there. I mean, you may have a quieter version of them, but you can start spreading them out. It's like, right now you've got two levels of width. You've got the really central stuff, and you've got everything else stuck to the sides. To get the really big sound, what you really need to be looking at is maybe 4 or 5 levels of different width. You'd start bussing things out and having it so that you can have some more stuff batting side to side, perhaps in places like those really fast ARPs. They don't have to stay in one space, they can move across it. Because you're making it harder for yourself in mixing this, especially when it's meant to be a really energetic track. And it'll make it easier as well to balance your volumes, because right now you've got things where, like, the drums come in and they're really quiet compared to everything else, but it's not really that you can just bring them up and make that work, but you also need to spread everything else out a bit more while you do so.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's just so much going on in the drops. And it's interesting that you said that you're still mixing the beginning, because to me, I think the beginning was the clearest part of it. Like before the crazy drums and bass came in, I really liked the panning and the wahs that were going on with your synths. It was super interesting. And I really think that, yeah, you could mix the drop almost like against that beginning a bit more, because the space was better in it. Like you just have a lot going on, which is going to make it hard to mix. And it's definitely like, it's not quite soup, but it is really intense. And there's a lot of places, like this is actually an example of maybe how my track will get when it's a whip, is that there will be a little bit too much. And so it's kind of like carving negative space. It's like being a sculptor at this point. You can go into your track, and sometimes it can even be as simple as like some people put hi-hats on every other beat, right? And so that means there's a hi-hats like ta, 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 ta. But maybe like you can take those hi-hats off when there's a snare or a kick or something big in the space. Little things like that. I didn't used to pay attention to them because they would get buried and I couldn't hear them, but they do contribute to muddiness. So I would kind of go through with a fine-tooth comb at this point and just go, what can I take out? You know, like what can I delete that won't even be missed? You start with that. You take away things that you don't even notice when they're gone. And then after that, you can make harder decisions. Like maybe you can alternate parts a little bit. Maybe there could be a drop part that's more minimal that gives you some contrast. Like I would really love to hear that. So I think there's a lot of stuff you could do, but I think you're in the right direction. And the beginning sounded really nice and clean. And I enjoyed that. And I liked the idea. And some people are saying the drums are not quantized. They're not. It definitely might be worth taking a look. That's something I can be guilty of too, because I play my drums in by hand and I used to be quite lazy about it. And I think that I like wonky stuff, but this isn't really that genre to be wonky. So I do think that people are right that maybe you should tighten the quantization just because of the style that it is. So
I mean, I actually do the same thing you do when it comes to making tracks. You know, I just mush stuff in and then deal with it later. For me, I think of it a bit like in woodworking. Something you do is varnishing, is you layer a top coat, then you sand it off so it's a really smooth coat again, and then you layer another one. You just keep sanding off so you get all the rough edges out. And for me, making music's the same way, where I just keep stacking and taking things off until it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Removal, less is more. And this is a universal thing. Like producers get more experience, they start to be more and more kind of minimal in their choices, because sometimes the easiest way to get a clean mix is just to have less things in it. Very simple stuff, you know. All right, Sanso, you've been really patient. I know it's late. We're going to get right to you. Thank you for supporting us. We really appreciate you hanging out. This is just want some general feedback, and this, I guess, is a collab. So let's hit it, Sanso.
Just like the others, I feel alive above the plains. Soaring, you can't take me down. I feel alive, feel no more pain, no more doubt. Would you believe in something? It's hard to believe. Would you believe in something you couldn't see? It's hard to believe in something. Waited so long, but you got to believe in something. you tell me I'm just like the others? Your words I never trust, they're just like the others. I feel alive above the plains, soaring, you can't take me down. I feel alive, feel no more pain, no more doubt. Would you believe in something? It's hard to believe. Would you believe in something you couldn't see? No, it's hard to believe in something. Waited so long, but you got to believe in something. Would you believe? Could you believe?
Well, some very, very big room, very large room. This is you have achieved having the bigness of the room, and it's catchy, and it's got like that super radio friendly vibe. And I think that, I mean, you pretty much dialed all the things of the genre. As others have said in the track, the vocals are a little bit loud, and because of that, they do distort a little bit, and they do kind of cap your mix sort of a little bit. And as others have said too, side chains would be better on some of the lead and the drop synths, some heavier pushing side chains that can also push and pull and give you that dynamic feeling a bit more. So I really wouldn't do much of this. It sounds pretty done to me, but just maybe mess with the vocal levels a little bit and just reassess the balance of that part of everything, because you have a pretty strong drop and other really good elements. Natty, any thoughts?
I mean, it's definitely taking me back in time a little bit myself to, you know, sort of that 2008 to 2012 EDME housey stuff, you know, Calvin Harris, I think Tiesto was doing stuff at that time as well, like that. I mean, it was a really good vibe. I mean, it is just nips and tucks and just double checking that you've got everything at this point, which is always the most boring bit, because you just want to get the track out now, you're sick of working on it. I mean, I know we also made you wait as well for it's late where you are, so thank you for staying up with us and sharing your track with us, because it was a nice vibe. And sorry, I was paying attention. I've just been double checking my setup for plugin of the week.
Gosh, you got it spoiled it already. But yeah, I mean, just to say, like, I know that I appreciate everyone waiting patiently. If you get into this, if you're a regular, you can always sort of roll by the forum a little bit before the stream. And usually at that point, there's like 1 or 2 people in it. You can also tip us a small donation and jump the queue for $3, which is really not that much. Or you can get deluxe feedback, which means we listen to the entire track and give you more detailed feedback. But as always, this is free. This is ILBC TV. We are the International Live Beats channel. We have tons of cool events coming up, so if you haven't already subscribed, please do, because we have so many challenges, workshops, competition, cool stuff coming up. So we are going to take a little break. Let's segue now and into our plugin of the week, which is going to be presented by Nathaniel. So for finally, you don't have to just look at Ableton all the time. What even is this, Daw?
This is Magic Samplitude Pro X4. It's a couple of years out of date now at this point. I actually just sort of fell into it because it was on sale, and I'd already used previous Magic's products and thought it was nice. But I generally quite like using it. It fits the way I think. It's a little bit comparable to something like Logic in that it's a very object-based workflow. But you know, it's like. And you get automation lanes and stuff like that, which is nice.
Wow.
And so, like, the plugin of the week this week, and I'm just making sure it should work as long as I don't mute it, is OBXD.
It was working earlier.
It's a free synth emulation of an Oberheim synth from the 80s. Pretty sure it's the early 80s. I don't know how it's coming.
Yep, there you go. You were nice.
It's coming.
Perfect.
Nice and loud, and
nice
it's not crashing, which is a
Wee.
thing. Always
Ooh, nice and round and thick with 2 C's.
But I mean, my main point I think with this isn't specifically whether OBXD is something you should try out. I mean, it's obviously because it's a freebie. That's whatever. You know, it only costs you time. But that you shouldn't, even though your Serum and Vital and all these other more advanced synthesizers exist, you shouldn't necessarily dismiss simpler ones. I mean, if you're just learning, they're a really good way to sort of get the gist on how things work on a basic synthesis level. This one, it only has 2 types of wave, a saw and a pulse wave, which is closer to a sine. But because it's based on an analog synth, it's not a perfect sine wave. So that's why it sort of has these little things. But also you get your filter envelopes and your amplifier envelopes, your ADSR. So you can
Natty, can you
that.
move the synth to the left a little bit so that our heads
Oops,
don't
it's
cut it
cutting
off?
There we go.
Even more. Move it all
Even
the way.
more.
There you go. No, you had it.
There.
Nope. To the
There?
right. There you go. Perfect.
All right, there we go. So, you know, this is when you can actually start learning what an envelope does. It's a really good way to do it, I think, personally. Obviously, it's not showing you visually, but it's more about making you hear the difference, because I think that's important too. So you can change that, and it changes the decay, how long it takes to disappear. So I find basic synthesizers like that really handy, just sort of to keep the process simple. But the other thing is that a lot of sound designers in the more advanced categories actually rely a hell of a lot on post-processing and resampling. So here, if I load up Reactor, if it'll work, play files, will it load up my... So I've got this bank here, which was made by a Discord user on EDMP. I actually don't know what they normally go online elsewhere, so I mean, but if you start doing that, it should be... Is it working?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if it's actually playing the... Oh, I know I've got effects turned off, that's why. Oops. There we go. So you can start to create all these sort of sub-harmonics with any sort of post-processing you want. And it's basically a different way of working. It's not really about whether one's better than the other, but about inspiring yourself. You know, once...
Oh, Natty, you just cut off. I don't know what happened. Your sound is completely cut off. Weird. Natty, I don't think he can hear us anymore. This is so strange. Okay, Natty. Natty, I don't think he can hear us anymore either. All right. Oh, there you are. Weird.
Yeah, I think something's still wrong with the darn audio driver and voice meter, and I'll have to keep troubleshooting, I guess, because Reactor seems to kill it, and I don't know why. But yeah, so it's just fun. There's also plenty of presets available online, which is always fun when you want to deconstruct things, or you just want that traditional analog sound.
Oh, it's so huge.
Yeah, exactly. It's like from a bass perspective, you get a lot to work with without much extra editing. But obviously, it doesn't necessarily work out the box for bass music or something like that. But I mean, I think we should all sometimes embrace being a little bit more just random and creative for the sake of it, you know?
Absolutely. And simplicity, sometimes it can get lit. This is why it's wrong with me tonight. Simplicity. Maybe I should talk with more simplicity. Simplicity can clear your mind sometimes when you're stuck. Sometimes it can be because you have too many options. So I really like simple synths. Yeah, like that nice retro, crispy, synth-wavy, delicious sound.
Other features I like from this one, it has up to 8 voices, but you can also pan each voice individually in a sequence. So you can have it so that it does different things. So I can have it so the 5th and the 7th pan really extreme to the other side. And if I turn the audio unison off, it's probably going to be more obvious. So you can hear it there. But I mean, it's effectively a way of creating micro movements, especially while unison's on, it's more subtle. But yeah, it's about creating that movement, so it's actually quite versatile for the ear candy.
Ear candy.
Ear candy. And then obviously combined with something like, I mean, Isha was talking about automating compressors and stuff. I really like automation lanes for this very reason, because I can actually see and change everything in proportion to each other. So I can have it so that it only has the unison down a little bit and then plays whatever. So if I was to click play now, my MIDI should actually respond. You can see. So it gets more unison as it goes along. But you can do that with compressors and stuff too. It's kind of fun. But yeah, so my plugin of the week is very unprofessionally presented, but at least it sort of works. Sorry about the weirdness in my setup right now. I'm not sure why it keeps crashing. But thank you everyone for watching this.
Yes, well, that's amazing, John, and it sounded really great. I mean, it only crashed once, so I think we're okay. All right, so we are going to keep moving to the feedback stream, and there is shouts out to Arkoga, who is asking us every 3 minutes when their turn is. Your turn is coming up, I promise. Please be patient with us. We're trying to give good feedback to everybody. Hopefully you're hanging out, you're giving good feedback too. We love you. So next up we have Complacent. Thank you, Complacent, for being so complacent and patient. Really, really love that. We're going to just check out, it's actually a Spotify thing. I think that should work. Let me just make sure that I don't think it's hooked up to my stream. So let me just do it 1 sec. We don't usually have Spotify because we usually don't allow release tracks. But this user has told me that they are okay. They have authorized their music to be streamed. So we're going to go with it. All right.
Atlanta police are trying to figure out who killed a young couple inside of their own apartments Monday night. We were there as investigators swarmed Camden Vantage Apartments, and police tell us the couple had been stabbed.
Check you on my list just like the markup on my Nikes. Fuck you bitch, I'm dropping psilocybin straight into my eyepiece. You ain't shit, I'm dropping bass on shit that make me low. So I see bangs and rip it to these pussies thinking they can come and fight me. Yeah, step into my whip, it costs that 40K so pricey. Then I dip onto the road to buy a pound and smoke it nightly. Give a slit up on my wrist and see the blood run down so nicely. Now you split it, trying to get away and follow away. Yeah, you don't even know the shit I do to get my life this way. I grind my life away to send a message while I'm making bank. I do it all in vain to put a picture up inside my brain, and maybe soon I won't be seeing visions every fucking day. I'm acting like a god, but standing small up here at 5'8". I weigh 110, but swear I'll paint your blood all on my fucking face. I like to play, but have a tendency to just eradicate. Just go away before you get aggressive. If I switch play weight, straight so much, got more on my plate. I'm eating it all, cause I got more to say. I'm not fit for the shit, but I'm staying in place. If I keep it just moving, I'll never be late. I don't wanna stay, but it's not my option. It feels my choice, I'd be in a coffin, so I just stay. And now that I'm loving the voice of fake, and nothing ain't stopping. Step up in my territory, so annoying. Try to be so scary, but I'll leave you looking fucking gory. Very boring, swinging right, and that'll end your fucking story. Give me this attention, and you know I'll rise to fucking glory. Can't ignore me, cook you up like crystal in my laboratory. Never sloppy with this pistol strap, I feel so fucking cocky. Never choppy, might be the only thing that's fucking dropping. Pistol cocky, fully loaded, tear someone in. You on my list just like the markup on my Nikes. Fuck you bitch, I'm dropping psilocybin straight into my eyepiece. You ain't shit, I'm dropping bass on shit that make me low. So I see bangs and rip it to these pussies thinking they can come and fight me. Yeah, step into my whip, it costs that 40K so pricey. Then I dip onto the road to buy a pound and smoke it nightly. Give a slit up on my wrist and see the blood run down so nicely. Now you split it, trying to get away, I follow it. Check you on my list just like the markup on my Nikes. Fuck you bitch, I'm dropping psilocybin straight into my eyepiece. You ain't shit, I'm dropping bass on shit that make me low. So I see bangs and rip it to these pussies thinking they can come and fight me. Yeah, step into my whip, it costs that 40K so pricey. Then I dip onto the road to buy a pound and smoke it nightly. Give a slit up on my
Oh, definitely. This is like a style that I don't hear very often, but it's super fun. As others have said, I want to know if your vocal cords are okay. It seems like a very tough style to do. I had some friends who were like metal and punk singers, and they were always doing like all these crazy exercises to yell with purpose. I agree that the bass could be a little different. I think it is pretty distorted in my ears, but maybe more distorted on the upper part instead of the lower part, because I think perhaps the distortion is just a little bit too low down. And Barrett's saying, I'm not sure if the vocal fry is intentional or if the vocalist was trying to record. I think it was intentional. I think this is a stylistic thing. But I mean, I dug it. It's like I said, not my usual thing, but I really did enjoy it. So Natty, do you have any comments on this?
I mean, honestly, I have no idea how people produce those sort of tones either, to be honest. I mean, I certainly cannot add grit into my voice like that. So it's, I do find these sort of tracks really cool. They're swaggery and dark, and you actually feel like you're going to a really creepy sort of back alley place. And I mean, aside from what you've suggested, I don't really have anything obvious to improve here. I mean, it's hard to tell when it comes to stuff like mastering, especially when playing from Spotify, because of the way they normalize. So I don't know whether it's in context, whether it's ducking your track or raising it or anything like that. So there's nothing valuable to say there. Also, a sneaky little 0.0003.2 cents.
Not. I love it.
Not.
That's so much more romantic than zero. I think I'm going to start saying not. But it's not the same when I say it. It sounds so flat. It's your accent that makes it nice. If I say not, I got not. Anyways, sorry, Natty. Your accent is on point today. But yeah, that track is pretty much done. So it is hard to, but thanks for sharing it with us. I definitely enjoyed it. Next up, we got Mr. Cool, aka Sea Addict. Okay, just wondering some feedback on the mixing. All right, here we go. Sea Addict in the house.
You pull me in, push me away. You chase my heart, then hit the brakes. You hold my head underwater until I can't take no more. I wanna breathe you in, baby, but what are we fighting for? We're setting price for the sacrifice, burning our hearts just to stay alive. 'Cause when it comes down to you and I, whoa, it's wild. It's wild, wild, wild. It's pull me in, push me away. You chase my heart, then hit the brakes. You hold my head underwater until I can't take no more. I wanna breathe you in, baby, but what are we fighting for? We're setting price for the sacrifice, burning our hearts just to stay alive. 'Cause when it comes down to you and I, whoa, it's wild. It's wild, wild, wild.
All right, Sia, that's definitely a vibe. It really gave me this like feeling of like classic rave kind of that drum and bass anthem banging feel. Now, a few people were asking, is something in the wrong key? What's going on? So here's what I think is going on. You've got a really nice classic sort of synth sound, which is something that has like a fifths and thirds, like it's almost like baked into the sound. And when you have really strong harmonics like that, they can clash sometimes. Like for instance, you have like certain notes, the harmony becomes major because you're just transposing something that has that interval baked into it. But then the bass note is in the minor. So those are the points I think that people are hearing that are getting them a little bit squirrely. So I think what you have to do, sometimes if I really want to use this sound with like a fifth or a third or whatever the interval is baked in, I will have two versions of it, right? Like I'll have one that's in a minor third and one that's in a major third. And so you can do that. You can also make sure that you change the bass note so that it's not going minor when the interval baked in is on top of the lead is in major. So I think you have to go through and watch that, because those points are making it clash, and it's a really beautiful sound, but not when it doesn't go with the bass line. So I would just really go through. I think that's for me, that's the only thing that's really sort of disharmonic. So I would just go through and make sure that your intervals on your top synth are always working with the bass, because right now they're not. And there are times where you can be a bit off, but not exactly in the way that you are. So go through and check that. Another thing that you can do if you're just really attached to that sound and you have a plugin like Synaptic Pitch Map, which is something that I have, you can actually remap. You can also use Melodyne to do this. So you could like render it to audio, and then you could just physically change the interval to minor on that note that has the bass line. So there's a bunch of stuff that I would do. Natty.
And I actually especially like using Melodyne for this kind of thing, because you're still getting that artistic input at the start of saying, I kind of want the sound to have this profile, and then you're just sort of rationalizing it later. The other thing as well I like is that even for the essential version, they keep updating it and adding more features to it, so it's always handy. So if all you can afford is the cheapest version, it's actually very, very, very powerful. Mm-hmm. The other thing, I mean, I actually really did enjoy the vibe, aside from those slight bits where it was clashing. I think once you nail that, then the whole track will just suddenly feel like it's a really glued together and very DJ friendly composition, I think, as well. Yeah. Everything's got some nice divisions into your sections, and there's a clear build up and drop and resolution, and that's all solid.
Totally. All right, we're going to keep moving right now. Thank you for everybody for sticking around tonight. We are Feedback and Friends, and we cannot do it without you, because you are our friends. We do this every Wednesday, so make sure to get in early if you want to come sooner in the queue, or throw us a little tip or whatever. We're here for you. I'm Alicia, and this is my darling friend, Nathaniel Wyvern. And the next up, we have Errata with a track called Collapse. No specific feedback, so we will just tell them what we think. Oh, that was tasty. Super, super spicy, crunchy, crispy, really like nice sound design, nice depth, really nice sense of space. Errata, like, I can't believe this must be like an anonymous account because this account has 1 follower. This is not 1 follower music. This is definitely like some experienced, hidden, anonymous producer. Like, you can't just be starting. If so, you've been locking yourself in a closet for 10 years and not showing anyone. But really, really, really good. I mean, I don't have much to say about this. Some of the little screechy SFX percussion at the beginning I thought was a little bit sharp and a little bit too much in the front, just in the intro. And the rest of the track, it sat perfectly. So I think it may be that you have that percussion set at a perfect level for the rest of the track, like the drop, but maybe it's a little bit too loud for the intro. So I would just maybe gain it down just a little bit. But other than that, super sick track. And I'd love to know more, mystery person with 1 follower. I feel like there's more to your story. Natty, what do you think?
And I think that it'd be worth for the second drop. Those outro choices were really nice. You had that sort of I can never remember the difference between some of the Middle Eastern instruments, but in that string instrument, you don't have it anywhere else in the track. But I mean, your second drop is a really good place to start adding it in. The other thing is that bit use of bit crushing. I mean, why didn't you do that in the rest of the track? I mean, you had all those other cool effects going on. Why not just chuck a little bit more of the bit crushing as part of your ear candy? Because I mean, I think it works there, but it also just sort of comes out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, I think it's a really solid piece. And are you here? I don't know any, but
they are. They're on Discord.
Yeah, thank you for submitting.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, we have a couple people that we are going to skip till the end. The rule of Feedback Queue is if you submitted it, we will play it. But if you are not here, we will skip to somebody who is here. So it looks like our next person after everything is not here. So I'm wondering if we have Tricky Magic in the chat. I haven't seen... Oh, Tricky Magic, are you there? We're going to just ping you, and maybe I'll actually play the next one after that. Let's see. Oh, it's Aiden. I don't know. Aiden gets a hall pass because Aiden has been supporting like almost every one of our streams. So if you are a regular, we will also give you a break in this. But honestly, it's just kind of like a party, you know? Like if you just stop at a party, open the door and you're like, check out my SoundCloud. And then you like close the door and leave. Like no one is going to be down with that, right? So we just want people who are here to hang up. Oh, Tricky is here. Good following. All right. So the feedback comment says, I know it's a rap song, but it's about production boss. Hey, I just want to take this opportunity to say every genre is welcome. Every genre, classical, rock. We had somebody give like a full-on Disney song the other week. So do not worry if it's rap or it's not rap, because we like rap, and there's been some rap today. So it is all about the production, and let's check it out.
Hey, don't get too jiggy with the blick. Tryna take a flick, your beats will never work again. Yeah, my last stop, I'm wishing death like many men. Popping out with ounces in the party with my man. Hey, go fuck it, hella bands. Hey, fuck it, jazz hands. He do the green like he a Martian, man. It got him leaning off his kickstand. Niggas really up like the jump, man. Look at me, I'm Giannis, call me the bug, man. Bad bitches on me, Kobe, can I fuck, man? How they giving all this power out to one man? I've been posted up with choppers like the Taliban. Yeah. Niggas scary and they know we on their head. I'm fucking up, I'm tryna scale up on the bed. I'm way too late, they can't remember what she said. Bitch standing on business lately, clip it till it's red. Polyphonic, point up and tonic, tasty electronic. The process, don't get too nauseous, float up, stay cautious. Time froze, rose gold, gets hit on hoes. Kiki, I keep it with me, like Mr. Woody. Big hat like Woody, you cat baloney. Hey, you keep it phony, she ride my pony. Hey, rackets along me, I bless the homies. Hey, you kiss the crony, we shoot a movie. On my off days, I ain't dealing with the bullshit, I'm running out of bars. I know I had a full clip, my niggas feeling world domination, don't make no sense. How you wanna run with us and you ain't saying your papers in? I know you tryna spread it to the left, stretch it to the right. I ran up a couple light beam lights to double up the pan. I be cooking with dancing degrees. With the music, I'm a freak, choke hold on the beat. It ain't too hard to stack a 10. 5% tense on the beam. Folds up at 24, suck it, drop it in. Clutch it from the wing, fuck it, Kobe did it again. I treat the world like it's my friend. Ain't no pussy nigga finna make it in my head. Doing pussy shit, you fuck around and make your bed. Please pass the ball, it's a 3, I'll drop it in. Pass me the rock, niggas finna hoop some. I can't even link, I'm on the money run. week, you having breadcrumbs. You don't wanna beef, a vegetarian. She a super freak, I'm Rick James on them. Dropping flames on them, niggas just ain't used to this. All my brothers hip hopping, getting jiggy with shit. Come outside, nigga, bitchy at your gate with the glee. It's the Clone Wars, niggas copy pasting my drip. I've been running, I've been flipping the product, constant misconduct. Ain't never gave a fuck, been smoking holy fuck. Kicking the door or something, like the shit been on to something. Niggas been on to something, this shit on the floor or something. I think you hiding something, leave them high and dry or something. Found out you telling something, think it's time to die or something. Move like she tired of something, hands between the thighs or something. It's time to vibe or something, we lit like a light or something.
Oh, really, really nice. I love a lot of things about this. I love the metallic percussion. I love the energy and movement. I think you really got that. You know, some people struggle to find motion and tension in your tracks, but I think that your overall beat is super, super tight. And I really like that whispery tone. I think you got a really nice balance of whisperiness, but still having thickness and enough presence. Now, I would try alternating some of the parts out. Like, you have that really cool percussion and those really cool little hits. They don't need to happen all the time. And in fact, what might be really dope is to have a section where it's like just the sub and your voice, you know, just like rapping boom, 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 right? So I think that you could just have some minimalistic parts and just let different parts of the track and percussion show themselves off. Like, you have so much percussion going on that I feel like you could have one section with only one layer and one with another, and that would create some more motion within the track and just vary it up, because I think you don't want to put any more stuff in, for sure. Like, your voice, all the percussion is enough, but just take the parts you have and see how much variety you can create just with what you have, you know? You know what I mean, Natty?
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. Also, I feel like the same could be said for how you process the vocals. One of the things I found hard with this track was to understand which lines and phrases were actually important, because you kind of use the same processing throughout the entire track, and it's very, very stacked and layered with all these little ad-libs, and there was also some interesting harmonies and stuff, but because you keep the same processing throughout the whole thing, there's no peak to it. It's just sort of a constant flow of words, and choose your moments carefully, I think, in that regard. It's like some things have the harmonies under it, some things have the stereo, and sort of make us actually care about what you're saying.
I do care, Nathaniel. How heartless of you. Is his journey just not worth the travels? I can't even remember. It was so gold what you said, but
I know. I do care about the words, but it's like, you know, you can emphasize that to me. You can say this one is more particular important than the last word. This
True, I know what you mean, and I think that sometimes that can also even be as simple as like using stuff like compression or transient shaping and just really punching it out and like having a punchier thing overall, because there is a lot going on. But in your case, yeah, maybe just smoothing out those ad-libs so that they're really like accenting, because a couple people were sort of noticing that, oh, maybe they're a little bit loud, but I think maybe they just need to be blended in, and maybe the lead vocal needs to be a little stronger to compete with the layers of ad-libs. But yeah, cool production. Please come back and join us. We love rap. I mean, I don't know if you were here earlier when Natty and I were rap battling, but this is definitely...
You won that round by a landslide.
Word. Next up, we have Aiden, another favorite. Love your stuff, Aiden. He's got a draft for us today. He says, the vocals are demo whip as I'm continuing to build the track around them before recording the real takes. Looking for any ideas where to take the song next and what to add and subtract. All right, Aiden.
That felt nice. You felt it too? I don't know what to say. I wish that you could have a name so I could tell my friends about you. Rest your eyes in my eyes. Find a place in the sky. Maybe that's where I'll find you. My vision, my illusion. Let me see. Let me see. My vision, my illusion. Let me see. Let me see. My vision, my illusion. My vision, my illusion. My vision, my illusion.
Oh my god, this is so good. I want to listen to the whole thing. So I'm gonna sort of cheat and I'm gonna talk over bits and keep listening in the background. But I absolutely love this two-step switch up part. Yeah, you got so many ideas. You have so many different like syncopations. I think the middle part is the strongest part overall of all the elements. Like your vocals are actually really good throughout. Like you could almost get away with just using them. But I think the middle idea is where that bass line and that syncopation actually starts to gel. I think in the first part, it's going on continuously and it's very kind of like retro analog. And instead, to go with that Arabic percussion, I almost want more minimal syncopated bass. It doesn't have to be 808, but something that's sort of long and punchy, but like pitches down a little bit. So it doesn't, like, again, it doesn't have to be that typical sound, but just something that's more minimal. And I would kind of like lean harder into the Middle Eastern thing and actually have some little percussion fills, you know, like little different ethnic percussion. I really like to mix ethnic percussion so that I'm not like, you know, I think the trick is you're not appropriating if you sort of just mix together wonderful textures. If you just try to go by the book of one specific culture, that's when it can get a little bit weird. But I think just getting a global band can be really cool. So having some percussion from India and some percussion from the Middle like East and even some from China, like sometimes I'll mix those together in a kit and just use them and keep the bass really minimal because your vocals are so beautiful and haunting. Like you don't need much more in that first part. Then in the middle part, that's when that like sort of continuous syncopated bass fits perfectly with that two-step. So I would also really dig into that bass sound more. It's a tiny bit muddy, but I think that alternating it and giving some breathing room in the beginning will really make the middle even more dramatic. And those beautiful little vocal chop sort of glitchy things in the background in the middle, they'll bring those up. Those are so cool. So I think, yeah, the middle is my favorite part, and mess with the bass a little bit more and try doing some minimal stuff with percussion globally, especially in the beginning of the track, but maybe to tie the track together, you can have those little fills in the two-step part too and give it that flair as well, because I kind of start to miss the Middle Eastern part in the middle when the two-step comes in. So I'd love to have just some little hints, some little fills, stuff like that. Natty, what's your take?
And for me, I think that the initial chord progression, which starts out as ever so slightly quirky, almost wears out its welcome because you don't change it. I mean, if you're going to do that second chord with a slight difference to sort of throw us off, you need to keep throwing us off every time you do it. Or every second time, or whatever. You know, you have to sort of alternate in. So, I mean, you're getting into really advanced chord construction, I think, here. That you need to start really playing about with your augmented chords to stay obviously within the same tonal range, but add that variety, because while the vocals, I think they work well with it, it just makes me feel like I'm hearing a loop underneath, and that's not so fun. It's definitely something to. As the vocal processing reminded me a bit of some of Mike Snow's work, and maybe that's another angle to Earth Exploring, is playing about more with extreme vocal processing in this track. You've already got a lot of layers, so now just start resampling those layers and pitch shifting them into crazy places. I mean, it would also feed way back into that Middle Eastern vibe with the atonal stuff. You've got all the pieces here. I think it's just a matter of pulling it together and really leveling it up.
Yeah, and definitely like focus down. Like some of those ideas could actually turn into like other songs because you have such cool rhythmic patterns. So don't be afraid. I do this all the time to like take the little last part and just like, Ableton is so easy. You can just like pull stems from another project right into a new project. So no reason why not to like develop that and turn it into another song. So big ups, Aiden. Thanks for all your support. We really appreciate you tuning in to ILBC. And for those of you, if it's your first time, we have tons of events going on, including a sample challenge with Matt Black from Cold Cut, founder of Ninja Tune. We have live hybrid mixed reality concerts coming up. It's all going to happen on here. And if you're in Valencia, you can come to our concert on April 16th. So next up, we have FF4C, who has also been very patient. And as far as feedback, they said, does it vibe? But for real, though, I always get stuck on drum processing. I don't know how to bring them into the mix, and they're usually either too soft or ruin the dynamics. How to balance so many elements. More sidechain. Stick around for the end. Okay, so just for time's sake, I might have to skip through after the first couple of minutes. So maybe what we'll do is we'll talk of feedback and then we'll listen to the end. We'll figure it out. All right, let's check it out. All right, so just so we can get the end of the song in, I'm gonna start giving my little feedback now. I think your problem with your drums is a couple things. One, you've got a lot of sharp, tinny, like high-end stuff coming from your hi-hats, from your cymbals. Really go in there and look at it with an EQ, and you'll see that there's probably a very sharp resonant spike, and that is going to take down your headroom, right? Because it's really sharp and it's got a lot of amplitude. So first I would go through and contain your resonances, and then I would really just work on some warming up of your drums. Maybe, as I've suggested in some other tracks, some multi-band saturation would be good, something like FabFilter Saturn, so anything that allows you to multi-band or make your own split rack. But either way, warmth and analogness is what you need, because you've got a very digital sound going on in your drums. This breakdown, I gotta say, the stuttery part is the coolest part of the track. I think that should happen sooner. So here's the ending. Now
you're going drum and bass. Why do you leave the drum and bass to the end?
Yeah, I think this should have come in sooner. I mean, this is like quite late, and this is a great part, and this has got those chops in it. Really, really great stuff. I think move this a lot sooner. You know, that breakdown is great, but that could almost be like the beginning of your track. And the drums even sound better in here.
And it just sits with those arps really nicely.
Yeah, people like the idea of the whole song being double timed, and yeah.
The early bit just gives me the vibe like you just went really crazy on cutting everything because it needs to be clean, it needs to be spaced out amongst itself, but then you're being really, really aggressive with it.
Yeah, I think this really wanted to be a drum and bass song like the whole time, you know? Don't you, Natty?
Maybe the friends with the drum and bass we made along the way.
Yeah, like this part is super dope. Like, I'm gonna have to turn that back up. Listen. Like, really great glitch panning. All the ideas you have pretty much from the breakdown on should be moved to the first half. And then maybe, like, if you're really attached to the first half, you could make it a rollout part at the end. But I truly think that this track is, you know, sometimes this happens. You make a track and you really try to make it something else, and then it doesn't want to listen to you. It gets away from you and it goes in the direction it wants. And when that happens, I just say honor it. And that's why, like, people sometimes they come into the Discord and they're like, I really want to make prog electro post techno bass with the bass from Deadmau5's track one blah blah blah, and it's like, oh my god, could you be more specific? Like, you know, it doesn't do to pigeonhole yourself. Let the track do what it wants, because it very much wanted to be drum and bass, I think. Natty, what do you think?
I'm in agreement. I mean, for me as well, songs do tend to, once they come together, they write themselves, and all you're doing until that point is seeking them out a bit.
Yeah. Seeking them out. Any other specific stuff? Because I think that the drums, it was weird. They just started sitting so much better in the second half. So
yeah, I don't know what you've done there. It's just it's like all of a second, like your compressors and your limiting was all working properly, and everything else was just sort of in that right spot to make it actually sit. And maybe it's a case of not only pulling everything else backwards, but you need to start referencing yourself now. Say, I got this bit to work, well, how do I get everything else to sound a bit like this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, reference mix yourself, you know, compare the drums in the second. But yeah, I think you should just move those to the beginning and then take those same drums. Like, it sounds like you're using a different drum kit entirely. So I would just go with those second drums because they are a lot more solid and they fit. Yeah, exactly. So maybe that snappy snare it probably also has some resonant frequency, just like the hi-hat. And that's also going to take up dynamic range, but it's going to leave it sounding thin because the resonant part is taking up all that headroom that you should have for the weight and the heft of the drums. Okay. So that's what I would do. That's what Natty would do. And the chat seems to be in favor of more drum and bass, which is, to be honest, there's definitely a lot of bass heads here, but I mean, I think it just really sits nicely there.
Drum and bass, let's go.
Good job. Next up, we have the also patiently waiting Nevada System, looking for overall critical feedback. Their drums they think that they're weak. All right, let's check it out. All right, my friends. So I think you got a good start here. You got some really nice elements, but I can understand that you're having trouble managing this mix because a lot of things need to be managed. So first thing I would say is the synth here. It's not so much that it's too loud, but it's too resonant. Like it's a little bit painful even when I turn it down. So I would tame some resonances. Your drums. Definitely your kick could be shaped, transient shaped, as others have said in this chat. Your overall drum bus could really benefit from some compression and distortion, and you can do it in parallel. Like you don't need to put distortion on your whole drum bus. Put it on, dial back the wet dry, and just have a punchier sound along with it, because what you need is to thicken your sound. Your drums are just a little bit weird shape-wise, so again, pay attention to the envelopes of your kick, of your snare, like maybe tighten them up. I really love Ableton's drum bus transient shaper sometimes for very easy transient, quick transient shaping. Also shouts out to LHI Audio and the ST4B, which is a multi-band transient shaper. It's one of our favorite plugins since the guy who makes it is on our Discord, and it's a really, really cool plugin. But either way, look at your transients, because transients are everything. They can make your drums punch, they can make them softer, and I think that there's also some cleaning up in all the sounds that need to be done. Just really watch the envelopes in general, even of your synths. Like envelopes, tighten things up, and that will clean up your mix at least 50%. And as somebody else commented, the reverb is a little bit much, and that again is going to drown tails that are already too long and create echoes of things that you already needed to clean up in the first place. So before, I would even just take the reverb off and fix the envelopes of everything dry first, and then slowly add it back on. And make sure, a tip that I usually say every week that I haven't said yet tonight, EQ your reverb. Okay? If your reverb does not have a low cut already on it, put a low cut on it, and in a way that can separate it from the signal. So either like put the reverb on a send and put a low cut, or if you're using Ableton, put the reverb in a rack and put a low cut on it and run it with a wet dry chain. Either way, that'll just clear up space in your mix. Do you have some suggestions for Nevada System, Natty?
I think that once you make that space as well, you'll be able to actually thicken everything up effectively, because while you were worried about your drums, I also felt some of your synths lacked a little bit of body. And you could start adding in underlayers to those sounds that sort of enrich them a bit. Or you create variants of the same patch that you already have and start stacking those in places with slightly different processing on them. So one of them might have a little bit of distortion on them to introduce an extra harmonic. But you're still reinforcing the core of the sound, so it's like a parallel chain there. And you can also then play with how you automate that sound in not just the envelopes as well, and all the other whatever internal parameters your synth provides. You can keep a bass layer and a separate one that's doing a different thing that's sort of stacking on top of it. Because there were a couple of points, especially with your bass lines, where I felt they were very, very static. But I feel for this sort of track, you don't want to change the core character of that sound, which is why you create a second version of it that you layer in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's hard to not compromise the sounds that you wanted and clean them up, but there's always ways to do it so that people don't notice and you can preserve that. But yeah. Cool. Rags in the chat. If I had a master class on mixing, or I'd dump everything and start from the ground up. So that is an idea that we've had, because basically I started this channel because I really believe in free education. I wanted to share my knowledge with my friends and help young producers. But of course, also at some point there has to be a side stream to make some money to continue doing this. So one of the ideas that we had was sort of semi-private or private master classes. And so people can still get all the free workshops, but if they want to go a little deeper, they can join a class. So that is something that we have in the works, and hopefully we will be able to develop that a bit more. Right now I'm doing 10 jobs. So Rags, start doing a show. That would help me out a lot. If you do a show, it gives me more real estate in my mind to create more content. That would be super awesome. We got Slack with a real quick whip with main bass elements and vocals done, looking for mix advice. We always love Slack in the chat, so really stoked to check this out. All right, and it's 53 seconds of fire. Indeed, 53 Seconds of Fire. Yeah, I mean, that's already sounding pretty tight. I like the distorted bass. I would maybe try like automating some more like bandpass across it. So I don't know if you already have one on it, but just moving it just a little tiny bit more. Like that would be the next stage. Oh my gosh, Jinx FF4C at the same time said I'd move the bass resonance filter down the spectrum a bit. So same kind of
on the right idea.
Same kind of idea. Like I just think just to create that little extra movement, having those little delicious notch sweeps kind of like make you curl your toes, and you already have some really good sound design. So I think in a way it's also kind of constant, that bass. So having a few bit more dramatic filter bits would give that little bit of space and depth and dynamics that I think needs to come next, because you have a great wall of sound. Now you have to carve it out a little bit. Natty?
I mean, obviously right now it doesn't have a full song arrangement. I have some ideas at least that might help you with fleshing it out further, but I mean, with something like this, you could really do anything you want with it and it would still find a way to work. Your intro, it might be worth exploring a really, really heavily syncopated sort of pattern, and then you build up the confusion almost of what's happening here, and then you clamp right down into this really heavy drum and bass segment, and then people are like, oh, okay, now I know what's going on. And it's sort of, even though drum and bass is a very chaotic thing in its own right, there's a lot of very rapid movements. It'll seem almost rational in comparison to sort of your mad sound designy syncopated segment that you introduce the track with. And if you build that up, you'd be able to then ease us into it and then reset our expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be dope. I've heard your other stuff. It just needs a little bit more development and carving out of the spectrum a little bit. So juicy stuff. All right, so we have a couple more people that could not be here, but we have Cosmin first, and Cosmin was raging for a while and just it was very late. So big ups, Cosmin. I'm going to tag you and let you know like about when we're playing the track so that you can watch it tomorrow, and we will give you just the same feedback, and we wish you could have still stayed up, but we understand. So this is a track looking for general production and composition feedback, flow of the track, and if it sounds good. All right, check it out.
This could be the worst it gets. Nobody would ever
Are you waiting?
All right, some really nice vibes from Cosmin. Thank you. That was definitely like a festival hug your friends moment. I really enjoyed that part of it. I do think that there's a few things. Yeah, I got to be honest. That last dubstep 2012 bit was not doing it for me. I loved the rest of the track, and I think the rest of the idea is great. But all of a sudden, it's like we go 11 years back in time. And not necessarily in a good way, because I think that up until then you have some really sophisticated ideas and some really great space. But honestly, I would like ditch that last bass part or revisit it and try to make it a little bit more modern. It sounds a little bit like old Massive, you know, and in the nicest way possible. I think that your track is better than that. You know, so I wouldn't sell yourself short by kind of delivering that to the end of us, because I think the beginning ideas were good and the vibe was really nice. There were definitely a few conflicts. I think some of the melodies and the vocals were clashing. Somebody said that the vocal could be louder. It actually sounded pretty loud to me over here, but it's possible that, you know, with my sub pack and my high-end sensitive headphones, maybe I'm getting a more exaggerated spectrum than. Sorry, that sounded like such a twat. I wasn't flexing at all. I just mean that like my particular setup may be different than what other people are hearing, and so maybe on a computer or wherever you're listening, the vocals are being buried. So I don't know, but I do think that everyone's opinion in here is super valuable because we all got different setups and different ears. So I do think, as well as Schnitty said, this SFX are really loud compared to the rest of the track, and there's some weird rumbling in the bass frequencies in the beginning. So I totally agree with that part. Natty, anything else to say?
I think you need to give your vocalist a break. What I mean is, like, I don't know who's singing on this or whether it's a sample pack or what, but she's singing constantly, but the way her voice conveys itself doesn't lend it to the idea that she could actually hold her breath for that long.
Ooh, touche.
So, which it's fine. You can deal with that aesthetic, but it means you have to to make it more natural, you have to give her a chance to breathe. So, space out your vocals a bit so that she's not just coming in straight on every drop and chorus and whatever else. And if her vowels, if you're using vocal chops and whatever, make them more obviously artificial so that then it doesn't sound like it's her doing all the vocalizations at the same time. Or change the spatial arrangement so it sounds like she's coming from another position, so you can have it so that her oohs and ahs are coming from your sides rather than in the middle where the main vocal is, and play about with it basically to give it that sense of she's actually there recording it in one go, effectively, is the idea. I mean, that's the ultimate goal of something like comping. It's not to make it sound like it's a disjointed thing where it's all multiple takes, it's to make all those takes sound like one take. And that's kind of your holy grail here, I think. It's making this sample sound like it's actually one cohesive take that could be doable. Mm-hmm. Because she's only a human, and her lungs can only do so much.
Right, yeah. That's I love these little details that you noticed, Natty. It's so great. Okay, next up, we have this person. Oh, there they are. They came back. Hey, you're on now. They were asking all night. They were getting anxious, and I know that sometimes it takes a long time, but it takes a long time because we try to give really detailed feedback to each and every person. So we appreciate those of you that are supportive and patient. This is the vibe, and we are going to play your track now, Arkoga. I hope you've tuned back into the stream because I know you've been waiting all darn night. So here we go. This track was made on FL Studio Mobile, which is always interesting to me. People making tunes on phones. So let's check it out.
If I say that there is no place to escape from all the hopes and dreams that you've been hiding all away, no matter what you may face, there's only one way from the bottom. It's the way to the top. No matter what you may see, there's only one thing to hold on to. It's that there's only You know it gets sometimes so bittersweet. Find what you're called to do, no matter what they're telling you, no matter what they're telling you, telling you, telling you, telling you, telling you, telling you, telling you.
Well, after all that, I really enjoyed that, Orkoga. I gotta be honest, I thought that I really was not after the interaction that we had, and it was amazing. I can't believe you made that on FL Studio Mobile. That really blows my mind. I mean, the song was super catchy. The way that you put the elements in was great. The only thing that really stood out to me is I think the kick and the lower end were a little bit muddy, like the bass frequencies. Schnitty and I are like mental twins or something. I always see this great advice that Schnitty is giving, and I'm like, I was going to say that. So I'm pretty impressed that you made this on a phone. I definitely think you have great potential. And keep working on it. I'm not sure, like, it must be really hard to mix on a tablet and on a phone. I don't know. I feel like for me,
that's my feeling as well.
Right? Like part of the mixing process is almost like the physical act of like spreading out and like checking the speakers and like leaning back and typing on my computer. There's like this kinesthetic aspect to mixing that I feel like if I were on a phone or a tablet, I would just feel like shut in. But I mean, this was really like a really good bones and foundation for a song. It just needs a little bit of finessing, maybe some more minimal parts where not everything is going on. Again, just let this track breathe a bit. But what would you do, Natty?
I mean, for me, when you talk about the sort of the kinesthetic, for me, it's the surgical. I feel like my fingers when on a touchscreen are almost clumsy. So, I mean, I don't know how I'd manage to mix something like this down on FL Studio Mobile. I mean, I feel like that's a challenge to the point where maybe it's worth rendering out stems of your track. And if you have any mobile device, like any sort of Windows computer at all accessible, or even a Chromebook, you could load Reaper on it and try mixing it down in Reaper. Because, I mean, if you're keeping it as sort of a bare bones mixing console, it's something my brother actually does with his Nintendo 2DS. He has this core gap on there. He writes his music on his DS and then he exports it because he can't really achieve the effect that he requires for the production values on there. It's kind of impossible. Obviously I don't know your economic situation either, so I mean, I'm not going to assume that you have a super powerful rig on hand. If you're producing on your phone, you probably don't. But I mean, Reaper and doing basic mix
It's an
stuff
iPad
is
Pro.
lightweight.
It's an iPad Pro, so I think they're doing
Pro,
okay.
So they're okay then. But either way, it's a low cost way, I think, of getting the job done that doesn't rely on you having to spend a ton of money on software.
Totally. Yeah, I know what you mean. And I think I'm really impressed that you did all of that on an iPad. Like for an iPad, that mixing and everything is quite well done. But I just think, it needs to be taken out and finessed a bit. But this is definitely something that you could release. I mean, like it's got that catchiness and it just needs to be a little cleaned up and maybe mastered. So we're down, I think, to the last one, and prod by Sasa. Sasa has always been a super cool to us, so it seems fitting to close out the channel tonight. And this has been another crazy episode full of really, really wonderful and varied tunes. I always get super inspired by each and every one of you, so thank you for your submissions. And remember that we do this every week, so you can hack the queue by getting in earlier, right? You don't even have to tip us. You could just get in before the stream starts. It's pretty much that simple. So Salsa says, I think that this might be my first finished song. I'm sure you guys will be able to tell me lots of things to work on. I changed quite a bit from the last time. Any feedback is appreciated. So this will be our last track. Thank you so much, everybody. This has been another fun episode of Feedback on Friends on ILBC TV. Salsa. So salsa comes to us from producing, hip hop beats, and I definitely can always hear that influence. I think it's like always, as always, salsa, solid production and really nice and clean, but I think that it still is a little bit background. Like it sounds like it's missing a vocalist, right? And that's kind of tough because not everything needs a vocalist, but I think now you need to relearn how to produce around that, because right now it's like it's some really nice arps, some really nice things. Nothing is getting in the way of the vocal, which isn't there. So now you need to actually come up with some more interesting elements, maybe some syncopated percussion, maybe chopping up the lead, maybe even just taking the parts you have and evolving them more, like having filters, having glitches, having all kinds of little variances go through. Like that's where it is to me. It still sounds like a beat that a rapper is about to rap on, and instead I really want to hear it sound like a track on its own. What do you think, Natty?
Yo, I'm really happy, and this is my beat. It is a very happy sort of backgroundy thing right now. I mean, if you're going to explore evolving the core concept, I think it's mainly in a call and response that you can sort of add that sparkle. So you make the first bit you've already kind of got, and then it's just working out, well, what can I add on that says, yes, this makes logical sense as a response, and occupies maybe at that mid-range, high-end sort of thing that your vocal might, because then you can move in and out of it effectively. My brain is apparently just no longer working.
Yeah, sorry, we gotta slip one more track in because this is my bad. I guess Morty submitted before I cleared the queue, because I cleared the queue a little bit late. So I feel bad because Morty has been here for the whole stream and been super loyal. So Morty, you don't need to add me. You should be able to just DM me. But we would love to just close off with your track. Obviously, you've been so supportive. So if there's any way that you can post it like really quick, you can even just post it in the channel, and I will delete it immediately as soon as I copy the link. And Natty, do you have any words of wisdom? What are you working on right now? You've been so quiet. Are you making any music? What's going on?
Well, I mean,